All right, guys, welcome back to Sandman Industries. Today, I will be showing you how to part out a Festiva. Interior, exterior, top to bottom. We're taking this whole thing apart. Piece of shit. Now, before anybody says anything, I'm already bracing for the comments. Why would you part out a clearly perfectly running and driving car? It just moved in here on its own power. It did. However, what you didn't see from that side is the fact that this rear beam is currently held on with ratchet straps. That's right. I finally have a Festiva that is so rusty that the rear beam has entirely separated from the rest of the car. Look at that. There's nothing left. We have a ratchet strap holding it forward. Well, what's left is forward. And a ratchet strap trying to hold it back. Because of that, this shell is toast. And while it does run and drive, it does not stop. It has no brakes. There's no e-brake. It does, however, have a working 5-speed, a full working wiring harness, a good engine. It has AC. It doesn't cool, but it does run. It does lock up the compressor. So this is a perfect candidate to show you guys, A, how resourceful you can be with a broken, cheap Festiva, and B, how to take everything apart. Down below, you'll see it's broken into a ton of different chapters. So if you're thinking, hey, how to remove a window, you should be able to go down to the door section and then see just the window section that you need. You don't have to watch the whole, I don't know, 4 hours, however long this video ends up being. Although you could. I could use 4 more watch hours. A like and subscribe, maybe. Think about it. But either way, so I think we're going to start with the interior, move from there. The only exceptions are that we are not taking the dash out on this video, or we're not going to be showing you how, because there is a separate video for that, which you can see linked right about here. We will also not be showing how to remove the engine, because we have a video for that already, which I will also link about here. And you can also read about it down in the description. Everything else you should see chapterized down the bottom, and I will show you what to do. So let's get started. Now, thanks to the use of some movie magic, the door, the hood, and the engine are all gone. Like I mentioned before, showing the engine removal is its own separate video, which I'll have linked, so you guys can go ahead and watch that. And I've removed this door just to make it easier to film as we remove the interior. Don't worry, I will still be showing you guys how to remove the door properly. Later on, we'll also be removing all the AC components, engine bay wiring, and brake components. Everything else in the engine bay that was not covered in the engine removal video will be covered in this one. For now though, let's start in the interior and get this front seat removed. To do that, we're gonna start down here with the belt. It'll be in this little holder, or it might not be if yours is broken off. We will go ahead and just squeeze it on past. Like that. Then 14 mil, there are 2 bolts in front. We got this corner, so we'll start with those. Then we can slide the seat forward, take the 2 off in the back. This cubby up here in the dash makes a good spot to store these bolts as you start doing this job. Now we can slide forward. We have this back inside bolt here, and this will be slightly different for carby cars. Carb cars will have this rear bracket under the center console, which we're also going to be removing. So if you have a carb car, make sure you're taking that out and peeking back behind there for that bolt. That one's just a nut. One more bolt. Now our seat should be good to lift up and come out. Just like that. Now you can see our center console, our lower seat belt, that's the one that goes up and over to the track for the Autobelts. And again, it's a little different for carb cars, but you'll see that as you take it apart. We'll go ahead and pop the other seat out and then start taking off the center console. And through another case of movie magic, the passenger seat is now gone. Next, we will look at the back seat. It's a very similar procedure. You can see I have it folded in the completely flat sleeping position. I'll show you guys how to do that real quick. But similar deal, we've got 2 bolts up in the front on each corner. Then we flip the seat forward. There will be 2 studs on the back side. So we'll go ahead and pop those off. Now, to fold the seat into this flat position is actually super simple. And you can do this on any Festiva. That's the split seats for the LX, the long seat for the base model, the GL seat, whatever. You just lift it up from the middle and get it into this little tent shape, like so. Then if you pull it back up, you're back to your normal seating position. Other way around, you can flip it forward, push the middle up towards the front, and then you can slide it back just like that. Makes it super easy to camp in a Festiva. Coming around to the back side now, you can see our nuts holding up the rear of the bracket. Same deal, pop those off. And now the whole seat will just lift right off those 2 studs. We can take it out the door. With all those out of the way, we can start working on the center console and the seat belts. The center console itself has a removable ashtray, which we don't have to mess with to get it out. There is a screw on each side. And again, these are all JIS screws, not Phillips. So I highly recommend a JIS screwdriver. 1 on each side. Like so. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and take off our plastic surround for our lap belt. Pop him out of the way. On the front of the center console, you'll have this little clip here. It's actually a plastic clip that uses a Phillips screw in the center, a plastic screw. So we're going to be careful trying to remove that because they can be pretty easy to strip out. Just like that. Once you have it halfway out, you can just pull the whole clip out. Looks something like that. With that done, there's a little insert here. We can pull our e-brake up and pop this little piece of plastic out of the way. Like that. And with this piece of plastic popped out, this whole thing can then go around the seat belts. And through that slot we just opened up around the e-brake handle itself. That is gross. But there it is. That's the center console out, which gives us access to all the bolts for our seat belts and the buckles, this whole system here. Ooh, gross. Now I have the camera in the hatch looking forward and down, just to kind of give you guys a bird's eye view of what's going on here. These are the holders for the seat on the EFI car. So that's where the seat was bolted down earlier. There's your belt. This is where it's mounted to the floor. And up here in all this nasty grime is where it is mounted to the car. I think I'm going to go ahead and put a glove back on because you guys can't smell it in here, but this car has had a lot of mice in it. We vacuumed it a bit for filming today, but it's still pretty gross. So I'm going to put some gloves on. At any rate, to remove this whole assembly and these belt buckles, just a 14. You can remove the belts themselves right here. It's just one bolt that holds it to this little L-shaped bracket, or you can leave them on the brackets and just remove it as a whole unit, which I'll do on the other side, demonstrate. So there's a nut here. And if you're doing this on a Cubby car or a 89 EFI car, this is where your seat would mount as well. So instead of mounting with this big assembly, since there's no extra belts, this one stud acts as the seat mount. Take this bolt down here. And this is a longer bolt, and it's usually pretty rusty because all the puddles and stuff you spill in your car ends up down here. So I count myself lucky that one came out. Now this whole bracket should come up like that. Here's the plug for the seatbelt light. We will unplug it real quick. So there is that whole mount assembly. There was right here, that's the L bracket that holds on that buckle. And if you want to take your seat belt off of this mount, what you do is pop off this cover. With the cover popped off, you can see there is a bolt right here that holds this assembly to this bracket. And I believe that is a 16 for all the seatbelt hardware in here. With that out of the way, we'll go ahead and pop off the other side. This time we'll leave the belt in place. And this belt buckle has its own plug for the driver's seat belt. Reminder, we can unplug him. Then the same deal here, we'll unplug our seat belt. And the assembly can just pop up and out. While we're in here, I'm going to point out that those long bolts here in the rear use spacers for the floor. So if you come in here, kind of rusted to the floor, you'll have these little metal spacers. Make sure you retain those. If you reinstall this, make sure you put those back in. Otherwise, you'll bend that bracket really funny. The seatbelt won't work right, and your seat won't slide correctly because it all sits at an angle. So don't forget these. One on each side. And I should get the vacuum in here first to get all this out of here, but right here is a little formed metal bracket. This is the bracket where our screws went in for the center console. There's one up front as well that is held on by the e-brake bolts. So we'll leave him for now, but with our GIS screwdriver, we will go ahead and remove this bracket. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and grab the vacuum, clean this up through the help of some movie magic, and we will continue on. Voila, movie magic. Isn't that nice? Now we can go ahead and take the e-brake out. That'll be a 12 mil back here, 12 mil up front. We'll take off this 10 millimeter adjustment nut for the e-brake cable, and we gotta unplug the switch. This little switch right here is what turns on the brake light in the dash to let you know that you left your handbrake on. And don't lose this fancy coupler nut. And then this little tiny metal bracket piece that holds it in place. Make sure you keep both of those somewhere safe. The cable can now be pushed out here in a minute. We will push this clip down to release it, like so. Grab our 12. And with that 12 out front gone, that releases our little bracket for the center console. Now the assembly can pop out. If you look down in here, we can see, maybe if I release the brake here, that's where our adjuster came off of. So that's what pulls that cable up or down to make it tighter. We should be able to shove it down out of the handle. I can pull it like that. Then this whole thing slips on that collar. You see there, just slips down onto it. It's hollow on the bottom, so just pull it forward, just like that. E-brake handle is out. And before we leave the front section entirely, let's go ahead and focus our attention up here to the seatbelt control box. Now this will only be on the EFI cars with the Autobelts. This is the computer that controls the Autobelt system. And that's the only thing it controls. So if you are deleting your Autobelts, you can delete this box, no problem. This one's a little tricky at times because it is so rusty on so many cars. But basically we have one big plug there in the middle. We have a a GIS screw here, here, and one more on top there. I will see if I can wrestle it out real quick. I'm telling you guys, GIS bits, it's a magic. There we go. That is the box out. Oh, you just left so much dirt and rust on the carpet as I picked it up. There you go. That's your Autobelt controller. Now we can turn our focus towards the rear, start taking out all the rear plastic panels, rear glass, and the rear seat belts and stuff. So make sure you got a 16 millimeter and a 15 millimeter socket on deck. All right, now I'm gonna come in from the passenger side and look towards the rear driver side for a second. We're gonna focus on these bolts down here for the rear seat belts. So I'm just gonna go ahead and zoom in on those real quick. This is where the seat belts are held in for the back. And this is where your 16 is going to come in handy, because these are both seat belt bolts technically. So I will undo that. And again, there are spacers in here And these actually have little plastic retainers that will hold the spacer and bolt assembly as one little chunk. So I'm not going to pull it all the way out. As soon as it got loose from the metal, I'm going to leave it alone for now. Break that one free by hand. Years of rust are really taking their toll on every part of this car. All right, now with that popped out, you can kind of see here, that's the little plastic retainer I was talking about. So we have this bolt here with the retainer, spacer still on it. The back one, that plastic had failed, but here's our spacer and our bolt. Make sure you keep all that together. You don't want to lose any of that stuff if you're going to put this back together later. With that part out, now we can switch to the back, take out the back part of the seat belt, and then we can start getting the plastics out. Now, due to the rather special circumstances of this car, this isn't a step most of you should have to take, but for this car, we will have to undo the ratchet strap that is currently holding our rear axle together. Like so. Then, up top, we have the plastic cover that pops up to reveal this bolt here for the rear seat belt. It's supposed to just hinge. This one's broken off. We'll keep it for later. And once again, you can see we have our fancy plastic thingy holding the whole bolt assembly together. We next screw that forward. Then we're going to need to pop off these plastic pieces that cover the rear seat belt. These can be a bit of a pain to get off. Like so. So there's the cover. With the cover out, there is now a bolt right down here on the bottom of this. If you can't quite reach the bolt because there's too much seatbelt in the way, go ahead and just pull some seatbelt out. That way it gets thinner, gives a little more space to work with. So I'll pull it out to here. Now I can undo this. And there it is, one bolt. Same deal, this one has a spacer. Don't lose that. And now this assembly is free. You can't pull it out yet though until you pull out this plastic piece. So now I will get our GIS bits and we will start tearing apart all the plastics. Pro tip, while you're taking all the stuff out the back here, the cover for your seatbelt makes a great little tray to hold on to your hardware. Try to take note of what goes where. Most of these screws are the same size, but a couple are different. Like the one that goes to this top corner has a smaller round head that blends in better. Same thing for this one down here. The rest of them are about the same. There's some up front that are extra long. Just kind of keep note as you're going through it. These long ones that go into the side up here also have 10 mil heads. So if you don't have a long enough screwdriver or you can't quite reach in there, feel free to use a 10 mil socket with an extension. Works just as well. I might go ahead and do that for these because that bit's not quite long enough. Now this will pop up like that. Normally your speaker would have a plug right here. Somebody's already messed with this one, so instead of plugs, they've soldered these on. I should be able to pull the plugs off the speaker itself instead, like that. Then I will come over here to the camera because you can see our seatbelt still stuck in this thing. But if you take a look where the slot is that it goes through, you can actually just slide it through that little gap, just like that. So now speaker's out, seatbelt is out. We can keep plugging away at our screws. There should be a screw right here, but this one is missing, so we will move on. That screw is one of the special ones. That's not actually a screw, it's a threaded machine screw, so one special screw there. Now this panel can come out. We can also pop out our taillight access panel just to get him out of the way. Oh, nice mouse nest. Gross. Come pull it around the hook up here, and then the whole thing just pops out. And what I want you to take note of is this screw up here in the top corner that we took out. Usually I forget these because they get lost. I just heard this one fall. there's this tiny little plastic spacer that actually slides into a slot right here. That keeps you from cracking the plastic when you go to tighten it down later. So when you take that panel off, make sure you look for that little spacer piece, for that top corner screw. Don't lose it. If it's already gone, just be careful when you tighten that down that you don't blow through the plastic. Now while we're in here, we can talk about a couple things. We're not going to be messing with it yet. We'll come back for this, but just a quick tip. This is your speaker harness here. This is your fuel pump inertia switch. So if you're ever in an accident that has a really hard impact or a rollover, this little red button will pop up and turn off the fuel pump. If for some reason your fuel pump quits and you can't figure out why, especially if you went over a huge bump or hit a big pothole, come back here, make sure you push that button down. The plastic actually has a cutout in it that you can reach in with your finger. So if you sneak in under the speaker and just feel around, you'll feel the hole. You can pop that down. The rest of the harness for the car, for the body harness, comes up through here, through this channel where the taillight is. There's a giant mouse nest that we'll have to vacuum out before we get all this wiring out, but just take note of that. We will go ahead and pop this off, and then we can take our screw off here. All right, now we are back in the front passenger corner of the car, looking back towards the driver rear corner so we can get this panel out. Now, for this panel, you actually need to take off the rubber seal for the door. And that's really simple. You just kind of give it a pull. It'll separate just like that. It's hidden under this one, but for now we just need it down a bit. That way there's a little lip here where that holds this panel to the door. This little cover can stay on. What this is actually a access point for a hex key right here. That is for an emergency. If your Autobelts ever get stuck, you can put a hex key in here and manually wind them forward or wind them back. The car actually came with that little emergency hex key from the factory with your owner's manual, but if your car is missing all that, you won't have it. Not a big deal though. For storage for now, we'll pop him back in. This whole panel is held with clips here and down here, and one screw deep inside of that hole. So we can go ahead and grab our screwdriver, put the screwdriver in. This is the extra long screw, and it'll be stuck in there until we pop it off. There's just a bunch of metal clips in here, so I'll grab it from the back edge, just kind of pull on it. And you can hear the clips unclipping. There we go. I will dump that screw out. So there it is. There's the long screw there in the center, so make sure you don't lose that one. And then taking a look at the back of the panel, you can see those metal clips that we were unclipping. If one pops out, I heard one fling off somewhere in the distance over here, they just slip in like this. So they got a little tab on there. Tab just slides on to hold it in place. And now we can take that out. Then we can go ahead and remove our rear seat hooks. So now that all the plastics are out of the way, that's a 10 mil or the Phillips GIS bit. We'll just go ahead and pop those out. There we go. Now he's out. And it's the same process for the passenger side. Like I said, I'm not doing both sides just for the sake of my time. However, I wanted to make sure we did the driver side on this video because that's the more important side. As now that this is gone, you can see, first of all, you have access to your seatbelt motors, but more importantly, you have access to these cover panels. And these, along with this one down here, hide the filler neck hose and vent tube system for the gas tank, which we will be removing. So after we get the carpet out, I will show you guys everything that's under there. Before I leave the back side entirely, I want to take a quick note for the only difference you really have between the driver and passenger side, and that is for cars that are LX trim or have otherwise been modified, you will have a rear cargo light in this piece of plastic. If you have base model or mid trim, you won't have this light, but the plastic will still have a space for it. Basically, when you remove this, just like normal, so on the other side, and look at it from the back, you will have these plugs plugged into it. And again, all 89 up Festivas are pre-wired for all accessories, so this wiring harness will be tucked in to this hole over here. This one had a mouse nest in it, so it's beyond corroded and disgusting. But at any rate, you would unplug this from the back of the light here, and then the light clips in here with a piece of plastic. And on the back side, you have this little metal tab, spring tab. That's how you pop the light out. So you just push on that springy tab and push the light out, and then it would just pull out, unclip from there, and your cargo light is out. And there's that spring clip that we were just pushing on a little bit. So that's how you remove the rear cargo light. I have a bunch of these available. They're pretty easy to find on escort wagons, so you can make these work pretty easily just by using the on-off switch and grounding out one of these wires. And I can show you guys all about that when we remove the latch from the hatch later on. But for now, let's focus back to the front, get the rest of the plastics, the trims off. That way we can pull the carpet out. Now, to do all this, you don't necessarily have to do it in the order that I'm doing it in. This is the correct way to do it, as in removing everything that's in the way one by one to get down a deeper level. But like, for example, if you wanted to come replace the fuel pump, which is right under me, right here in the carpet, you don't have to go removing all this stuff. Technically, you can just flip the seat forward, pop these pins out of the way, and bend the carpet just enough to be able to access this plate. But doing it this way, A, gives you guys a much better view of what's going on, and B, will make it a lot easier to do it the correct way. You're not messing with a ton of carpet or trying to mess with plastic panels in the way, trying to tuck it back in place, etc. But just note that if you really need to remove just one thing, you don't have to follow all these steps. It's just going to make your life easier. Now we can start pulling off the strip down here that holds in the carpet and holds in the rest of this rubber seal around the door here. That's just a bunch of Phillips, so I'll start taking those out. And these are all the same style, nice little round head. So again, keep track of these. What I usually do if I'm taking a whole car apart, if I'm not familiar with the screws and stuff, just grab a bunch of Ziploc bags, start labeling them section by section. So for these, I just say, hey, this bag of hardware is for the front door foot sills. One sneaky one all the way up in the front corner. And then this has little clips that hold it down a bit. So just pop those clips off. If you look in here, there's one of the metal clips there, the one there, and it's got this little tube here that has to insert into that hole when you line it up. Make sure you line all that up before you just snatch it into place. So we'll take that off. Now, that big door seal that's made of rubber, we can pull that whole thing off all the way around. There we go. And now you can see the carpet's held in with these little stapled on doodads here. So you just lift those off to get the carpet out. This car's full of rust, so you can see this one's already rusted off and no longer doing anything. Go ahead and take this plastic piece off. And then I'll go ahead and adjust the camera. We can go down here and pull off these pieces in our center console. The space is kind of tight down here, so I'm going to freehand it. We're just going to come up here and sneak past these pedals to this kick panel, where you can see we've got some more of those screw type clips. And if I look up here, there's another one, and way up top by our hood release, we've got two more. And this is basically just a thin piece of cardboard, so we're going to try not to tear it as we pull it out. And it's out. So there's that piece. As you can see, it's literally just a thin piece of vinyl, basically taped to some cardboard. And once again, I want to save these clips. You can get aftermarket ones that fit pretty well if you lose any of these, or if you're going for a black interior upgrade with black carpet, you can always paint these black and get some black clips pretty easily. So I'll set those aside. And just to give us a quick peek of what we'll be doing next in here, you can see all of our wiring harness. You can see the carpet ends right there. It's kind of velcroed in place to some spots up here. And then we'll go over to our center console. This one's already been broken in the past, but what you would be doing is taking out a screw right here and a screw right here, and the same on the other side, and it simply pulls back and out of the way, like so. And you can see here, kind of marked in white, that's where the one screw goes. And up here on this little metal tab, right there in white, that's where the other screw would go. And then all this bracketry we'll be pulling out here in a minute. When we pull this carpet out, it's velcroed down. You'll see there's a bunch of 10 mils, so we can remove all this bracketry, take the dash out. Most of that was covered in the dash video, which again, I'm not gonna show you how to remove the dash on this one. I'm just gonna get it done really fast off camera and then show you guys how to get everything behind the dash in this video. But we will continue on with the carpet removal. I'll finish everything off on the other side, along with our shifter. Your shift knob simply unthreads, and I show a lot of this in my shift bushing guide video, along with how to install a short shifter. I highly recommend checking it out. But we'll unthread this, and for a Festiva, this is an M10 by 1.25 knob. And this one, despite being disgustingly sticky, is actually in pretty good condition because it still has the cap on it. Most of these are missing. There we go, the knob is off. Then we can take our boot off, and the boot simply gets a little cup inside of it that is wrapped around the metal base right there. So you just pull on it to release that little seal, and then the boot slides off. Like that. And then the seal here, which we can pop off later, but we'll leave it on for now. We'll come back later to remove all that as part of the driveline removal. So I'll pop back out towards the back. I'll finish getting the plastics out, and we will pull this carpet. All right, now we're back in, looking towards the rear from the front driver's seat area. We're gonna start with that back carpet. It's pretty simple. It's meant to be lifted up because that's how you access your spare tire. So if you look here, if I pull this up, there's our spare tire well cover, your jack handle, etc. This just lifts out. Normally your spare tire would have one bolt holding it down to the body. This one is so rusty it was not in it, so I'll just pull this out. That's the hold down bolt, or what's left of it. But I'll take this out. Your jack would also be held in with a bolt, a little T-bolt, which I just found. I actually was missing it. It's here on the carpet. It's actually rusted to the carpet, so it's really gross, but that bolt would normally be right here, holding your jack in. This little clip, so you undo that bolt, clip comes down, your jack comes out. There would also be a little cloth bag holding your lug wrench. That's how you undo this bolt. And your lug bolts, these suck. They always bend and break. This one's been used once. You see how bent it already is? Not worth using. I would just throw that away. And then your handle for the jack clips in these clips. We'll just unclip it and pop him out. You can really see all the rust in here. But the carpet won't come all the way out because it is clipped down with these little clips here. Now these clips are very likely to break. Again, I would just replace these with universal style clips because of how often they just snap apart. One's already out. Basically, you just want to come in here and pop it up with your hand. I can try to pop this one out real quick. There we go. Just threw poop in my face because this car's still full of poop. It's really gross. So I'll just pop all these out. Like that, like that, like that, and like that. Then the seat belts will slip through these little slots, and this carpet can come out. And it can go right in the bin where it belongs, because this is disgusting. I'm so glad you guys can't smell this. Now, we can take our seat belts out. And if you have an 88, 89 Cubby, once again, they have lap belts only, so you would have had a lap belt over here on the edge. And then these buckles, 16 again, they just bolt to the body. Just like that. And they are free. And you can see some of our clips stayed in place. That's fine. This carpet is also clipped down by these clips. We'll just pop it all past it. Looks like the clips are staying and the carpet's ripping. I don't really intend to save this carpet, so that's not a huge problem for me. If you want to save your carpet, which you should, the OEM carpet cleans up really easily. Even if it's disgusting, this is made of plastic. It'll pressure wash and degrease. So get a little plastic trim clip tool and pop the clips out. But now the carpet can kind of fold forward. That'll reveal our fuel pump access point right here, which we'll go over more in a minute. And then I can switch back to the front, show you guys how to pull all the carpet out from up front. Now, just in case I did not cover it very well in the dash removal video, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to remove this bracket over here real quick. There'll be 4 10s right here in the cluster. Down here, 2 more towards the floor. Coming around, there's 1 buried down in there. Then, looking at the back side, up top here, there is this nut right there. That should be all we need to remove to get this bracket out of here. All right, there's that one out. And this one is part of this full dash weldment up here. So to do it right, you're gonna wanna go ahead and finish pulling all the dash out. But again, go back and watch the dash video for that. Before I do all that on video, for now I'm just gonna bend it out just a little bit out of the way without breaking it, like so. That way we can access the carpet. Then what we're gonna be doing from here, and I'll be further back for the recording, so I'm gonna show you just an idea for now. I can put that Velcro strap back in here. It is actually pinned to the carpet with a little tiny pin right here, but it can stay. What we'll be doing is unvelcroing it from the firewall like that. And our goal is just to kind of roll that edge back and under the heater core box right there. So we're going to roll the edge under that box by pulling it down just like that behind the pedals. And I'm freehanding the camera right now, so pardon the shakiness. But you can see here, I'm just kind of rolling it under it like that. Then go around the other side, same deal, under that Velcro, pull it down. We're just rolling it past like that on top of itself. At some point, you're gonna hit a stop where that foam is down there that is glued to the carpet. That's part of it. So I'll pull it back to there. And then from here, we can grab the whole thing, try to pull it back and up and over our shifter. We popped off the plastic thingies on this side and on this side. So now I'll get the tripod out here and we will take it the rest of the way out. All right, we're back outside, looking at it in from the driver door. I'm gonna go ahead and move this out of the way, and then we can start trying to pull it up. There's no exact science to this, especially since we still have that foam pad attached down there, but basically we're just gonna wanna lift it up and back a bit without ripping off that foam too much. If it does become completely detached, it's not a huge deal. You can glue it back on, staple it back on, or just leave it in the car, lay the carpet on top of it. It's not a huge problem. So I'll start pulling this up. I'm gonna roll it from the back a little bit. Pop it over those rear seat studs. And again, I'm intentionally trying to just roll this. I don't want to start like jerking it around too much because it is full of mouse pee and it smells awful. And that's definitely gonna be keeping these gloves on. This is gross. All right, pulled it past that heater box a little bit. There's that big pad of foam stuck down there into the driver's side. So I'm gonna fold this area up. There's one pin holding it here, little plastic clip, another one on this side, on this rail where the seat sits. I'll just pop it past that. Same thing on this side, get around to it and pop it there. Then we can kind of come up and over our shifter, start pulling. There it is, whole thing's out. That piece of foam up front stays glued to the floor. And this was that big chunk that we were getting caught up on earlier. You can see it's just kind of glued to the bottom of that pad. But that is done. We can get him out of here and we can try to pressure wash that and save it, or we can throw it in the bin and buy new carpet. ACC still makes new carpets for Festivas. They'll make it any color you want for less than 200 bucks. Normally, I would recommend that. I've used it many times with pretty good success. So there you go, carpet is out. Now you can really see how the floor pan of Festiva is laid out. So over here, this is the base for the back corner of your seat. Then we have the two front spots with the seat bolts in here and here with its reinforcement rail. You can see the area where your seat belt buckles would mount to, as well as your e-brake cable. Back here are the holes where you would mount the rear seat mount and seat belt holder. Then further back, right here, we have two rubber plugs. This is where the manual buckles for the manual belt cars would bolt. So before moving the carpet, you would have come and removed two bolts here to get those buckles up out of the way. But the holes are still here. They're just covered by these plugs. You can also use these to install a harness or aftermarket seat belts or whatever else you might want. Ooh. Now we can start taking off the AB pillar trim for the Autobelts and get all the seat belt stuff out. This is really tricky. These are super fragile pieces, so we're gonna try to be extra careful with this. I'm gonna show you guys some of the best tips, tricks, and practices to try to get these off without completely shattering them. So this pillar trim runs all the way across from the B pillar all the way up front to the A pillar. It's held in with little clips throughout. One big long post right here that sticks all the way into the car. And then at the very front of the car, there's a clip that goes down towards the dash. Instead of coming out, it needs to come backwards, kind of up along this axis. I have the dash out to kind of show this a little easier. However, this can be done with the dash in, no problem. The only thing you'll probably want to remove beforehand is this front piece of plastic because it overlaps right here. You can see where it's nice and clean, where that's been covering it this whole time. You can try this with the other piece of plastic in place, but your chances of breaking this increase greatly. So I'm just going to start working my way around it, trying to pull evenly from both sides, like that. And I won't keep pulling from here. As soon as I feel it snap, I'm going to move up, pull it from right here, like that. I can already see it wanting to break right here. There's a tiny hairline crack, so we're gonna keep moving up. Keep moving my finger around. Right here, I can feel the clip. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving all the way up. You don't want to pry from back here. You always want to be moving forward. Don't grab this, you're gonna crack it. Keep moving my fingers up. Right there. Right here, this is where it gets really thin. This is very easy to break. It's already wanting to break. I can hear it cracking. I can feel it cracking. Try moving to the front of it just a little bit. Oh, it's really thin right here. Come on. Well, it broke. Like I said, these are super brittle. It's very hard to do without breaking it. We ripped off the bottom clip. I don't know if you guys can see, but I just talked about that long post that sits way deep in there. That's this guy right here. It's cracked it right there. It's not completely broken off. This one's fixable, but it's very difficult. And then up front, like I said, it slides in place. That one ended up popping off, but you can see all these little clips that hold it in. And down here, that's where the clip that slides in would have been, except it went flying just now. So for the most part though, that's intact. I can glue that little clip back on. Just be really careful doing this job. It's really hard to do without breaking it like I just did. Now I can change our camera angle a little bit, and we'll take out the actual seatbelt mechanism all the way through here. So we'll do a little editing trickery to zoom in a bit here, but we've got 3 10s holding the motor in down here, along with its plug down on the bottom. Then a couple 10s or Phillips holding in these little clamps. 2 more 10s holding the clamp here. And going up on the headliner, there's a plastic clip holding it in. I need to pop that out. Another 10 here, another headliner clip, another 10. Then moving all the way up to the front, we have another plug that needs undone, and another 10. So we'll get all those popped out real quick. Done. And there it is, the whole thing. I'll move out of the way here so we can see down on the bottom. There's our plug. Just simply unplug him. And the whole track is now free. While we're down here, I'm going to point out on this sub harness, there is one little red wire that actually goes out to the door for the switch. So there's a little button out here that turns the dome light on and off. That just unplugs from that switch. So right here is a great time to reach in there and just unplug him like that. And now this sub harness that goes all the way over here is pretty much free, and we'll be removing that here in a bit. Then while we're over here, going to come down here and remove the lower belt. So that is back to our 16. And that is the whole lap belt removed with its bolts and the little retainers as always. If your car has manual seat belts for an 88, 89, or if you're Canadian, your seat belt assembly would have bolted in right here. So there's a big bolt hole that holds the whole thing in. There would have been a small clip here with 2 Phillips that hold the belt flat, and then your seat belt would have bolted to one of these 2 holes. Now, the Festiva is actually full of these holes. If you check out the short I made with my car where I deleted the back seats, you'll see I don't have my trim up yet, and I have all of these seatbelt mount points filled with eyelets so that I can run straps to tie stuff down with. But these make converting to a manual belt easy. You can easily adjust how high your belts sit. I'll have a full manual belt guide out pretty soon, so we'll talk more about that in that video. But those are just some differences to look out for. With that out of the way, now I can go ahead and move on to the door card. So to do the door card, you just need to remove the handle, the interior handle, the crank window, and down the very front, another small Phillips. The rest of it is just clipped in. So I'll go ahead and start taking all those Phillips out, and I'll show you guys kind of what the clip holding the handle looks like. That way you know how to remove it without trying to get the camera in there because it's really hard to see. If your door card has map pockets down here, don't worry about it. It's still the same process. That map pocket is just screwed in from the back side. there's still that same screw in the front, and that's it. Nothing else different required. This stays in place, just loose. Take out this screw. Then for the handle for the window, this is what the handle looks like with the clip installed. So that'll be on the door, and then sneaking in the backside is that little spring clip that you can see right there. So what I like to do is use a pick, either a hook-shaped or a 90-degree pick, and just come in here from the top or the backside and try to grab onto the back edge of that and pull it out this way. And I'll show you that on the door here in a second, but basically you just grab onto that guy and blink, and try not to lose those. They go flying, as you probably just heard and or saw. So I will move the camera a little closer and we'll see what we can do on the actual handle itself. So here's our handle. You can see we have this, here's the door card, there's this little plastic spacer, then the handle. That clip will be right between this plastic spacer and the handle itself. Now I'm going to turn it till I can see that clip right there. I'll simply try to get it out with this pick. And there it is. You can see it. I'm just sneaking out past the edge. And again, trying to go slow so I don't lose it. Don't want to scratch the door card too much. There it is. So now I grab that, slide this off. Don't lose that plastic thing. There you go. And that's it. Now to store these, you just put it back on your handle. So there's two little slots in there. You just click it in like that. And then make sure that the fat end is facing away from the handle. That way you can come back to this later. Now when you go to put it back on, you just leave the clip right there. This has a tapered end. You just pop it on and it's splined. You can put it any direction you want. I try to make it so the window's all the way up. They both face up like this so they don't butt my knees. With that out of the way, we can now start unclipping the door card from the door. So there are clips all along the edges, down here at the bottom, and the one screw we already undid. So I like to start from this bottom corner, and just pull it. You'll feel the clips undoing. You just keep pulling it till you find the next clip. Pull at the clip. If you have one of those plastic trim clip tools, now'd be the time to use it, just to help keep them from pulling out of the wood of the door card. But it's pretty simple. You just keep finding the edges and popping them off. And I'm gonna sneak up into it from behind, so I'll bend there's a metal strip in the top of the door to help it hold its shape. Try not to bend that too much. Just like that, easy. And now, we still have our handle right here, but it's loose. You can navigate it around. So what you wanna do is just turn the door card so the handle slips through it diagonally and it pops off. Give this a flip to the back side and you guys can see. Here's where all those clips were. They're pretty simple. They're just like a little keyhole they slide into. So you have your clip here. It just goes in that big hole. It slides over the keyhole. They pop out. It's super simple. These often get damaged or wet because there's rainwater that gets in the door. You can see this one got a little moldy down here in the bottom corner. This glue started to come loose. So these might rip right through the cardboard. This one's actually in pretty good shape. So we're lucky that it didn't tear anything up. There we go. Also, if anybody wanted to add door speakers, which I'll have a guide for at some point, you'll see there's already a half-drawn circle here with the bolt holes where you would drill to put a speaker in. No US Festiva came with them, but the door cards are marked on where you would cut them out. If I move out of the way here, there is our vapor barrier. So this is what keeps all the rain that gets in past the door seal out from your cabin. Don't tear this up too much, or if you do, they make kits where you can just do this, a universal new one. It's basically just a sheet of plastic with some sticky black butyl glue holding it on. So if you can, peel it off in one nice sheet. If you can't, then you can tear it off. This one's pretty moldy and gross. I'm not too concerned about saving it, but I am gonna try to peel off all this nasty butyl along with it. So I'll probably just time lapse some of this. We'll go ahead and pop our door handle out of the way here. This is pretty easy. There's just this clip right here. You pop it towards you off the rod, and then you can see it just kind of spins, and then the rod will pop down. All the door rods use that same style clip, where it's clipped into the device so it can rotate, and then it clips on the rod. So the rod goes down into that hole, then straight through. So later on, I'll be working on the interior of the door here pretty soon. There'll be a ton of these clips. That's how they work. So now the door handle is off. By the way, if anybody wants some of these brand new in black, do a nice black interior, I have these available on the Festiva store. Check them out. So looking at the back corner of the door where we have our lock, if you look in here, you're gonna see what looks to be like a spider's nest of rods and clips and whatnots. I'm gonna try to show you where all this stuff goes and how it pulls out. It's kind of difficult due to how cramped it is in there to film it, so I will pull it out and then I will reassemble it outside to kind of show you what you'd be looking at. But just for now, we're gonna look down in there behind that weather channel. That is the door latch itself. Let's see if I can sneak the camera in there. So there's the latch mechanism. Pan up a little bit. You have this main rod, and then so those two nuts right there and right there, that's where the handle bolts in. You have that big thick gold rod that holds the actual door handle, so that's what actuates the latch. Then there in the back you can see the door lock. There's the lock mechanism and its clip, and there's a little retainer for it. Basically the same retainer system that holds in the brake lines on the strut, if anybody recalls those. So we'll go ahead and get all those removed, and then we will remove the clips from down here, and we can unbolt all of this. We're also going to want to make sure we unplug the cable that goes to the latch. On the EFI cars, this latch sensor is what actually controls the seat belts. This is what makes your seat belts open and close. For the Autobelts, so a little clip here, we just want to unplug that. Then the plug will go with the latch. I've undone most of the rods, so I can show you them outside of the car. And if we come over here to the actual door, on the outside of that latch, there are 3 big screws. Once again, big JIS screws. They should be number 3, but we're gonna go ahead and use our number 2 to get them out for now. You'll just unscrew these. Don't lose the little lock washers that are on them. Now, we should be able to wiggle out the latch mechanism. Just wiggle it right down here to the bottom. And then we will set this up on the bench, and I'll show you guys what exactly it was I disconnected from inside there. We will also need to pull the lock itself from the door. And for that, you want more or less just a long flat blade. The door handle itself pops off with those couple 10s. And then if I can get the camera in here at all, there is our lock. Another screwdriver. Cobble out of there. There's that tab. We want to just push that tab thing up. So you can see I'm loosening it with the screwdriver. It's moving around. Just move this tip here. There we go. I'm gonna try to reach in there and grab that tab. So that's what we were pushing on. And the lock just pops out towards the front of the door. And I'll pull it out. Just like that. And here's that assembly outside the car. So we have this long rod right here that goes to the inside door handle. Then up here we have our locking tab, our exterior door handle, the exterior lock, and down here are all the clips that hold those in. So basically, if I could hold this still, you would see that moving this handle here is the same thing as moving this one up and down, and then moving this lock here also moves the door lock. If I hold it up so we can get a better view of it here, you can see all those clips I undid, same as that other clip I showed you. So there's a long clip for the door, there's a clip for the lock, there's the clip for the outside lock, and there's the big thick gold one that goes to the door handle. The door handle is the only one that's a little different, and this is the same for the hatch handle as well, but from the inside you'll see those were the nuts we undid. And if you also notice, the door handles are mirrored. You can use a left door handle on the right door and vice versa. You just got to change where this clip sits, but this clip just unclips right here. like that. And you'll see inside, oh, that broke, but inside it's threaded. Those threads don't actually matter. It just helps hold this better. You pop that off. You can actually make adjustments here. How far up or down in here will change how well this handle works. So you might have to mess and kind of tune that to your liking. When these clips break, especially when they break in the hatch, I actually have replacements for these available on the Festiva store. There you go. That's what you're undoing when you're inside there to remove this whole assembly. The holes remaining from where we pulled all that out. And that door handle sits up inside of this, so you kind of have to flex it down, wiggle it out to get it out from those little holes. Next, we are going to remove the door glass and the window regulator assembly. Now, once again, I'll try to edit this so I can zoom in on spots, but I want to start with the overview just to show you guys where all the bolts are. Pretty much everything we're going to be doing is back to 10 mils or the small Phillips bits. To start, we're going to want a window crank, and we don't want to latch it all the way on, so I don't have the clip in this one. But we're going to want to roll the window down until we see the screws that we need to access down here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Crank it down. All right, so you can see how far down we have it, but now there's a screw there and a screw there. We're going to want to undo those. Again, these are 10 or the Phillips. And that sits in a little channel with these little plastic clips. I have those clips available as replacements on the Festiva store. I'll go ahead and go outside. You just want to tip the glass forward like that. And then I will just gently put my fingers in here and kind of pry the door open to get past those little clips. Here, you can see these are the clips we were talking about. So they just fit in there, sit on this bottom edge with a clip in the front. I have replacements for those if you break these. The regulators are all held in with 10 mils. So once you pop your handle back off, you'll have 3 nuts over here. And then coming back towards the middle, you have 2 nuts up top. Then going straight down, you have 1 bolt here. Go ahead and remove all those. With all of those out of the way, we can grab our regulator right here, pop it out of the way, pop this into the door. There it is now, it's fall to the bottom. And then you have this nice big open cavity in the back. I'm just gonna take this whole assembly and take it out through this hole. There you go, that's how you remove the whole regulator assembly. We'll set off to that side. Now we can start undoing the wiring harness. So the door will come pre-wired for the door sensor, which we already unplugged. So there's its tip. And then it also comes pre-wired for power mirrors. So this car doesn't have power mirrors, so the cable is just sitting here clipped up out of the way. We'll just unclip that clip. And then it's clipped in these extra holders, so it doesn't rattle around. So we can unclip it from those, like that. Same for this guy. It's held in with multiple little clips all along the edge. We'll push those in. Then I'll pop the door back open. Now we can peek in here. Here's the plug for the door. That was plugged into the dash harness, which we removed and unplugged when we pulled the dash. There's a rubber plug right here where it goes to the body. That harness falls down to this rubber plug, and that's where then it goes in the door and splits off to all of our wires. There's another clip hiding up in here that holds the wires inside the door. I'll go ahead and flip over to there and pop them out of that holder. Then we can pull this from the door here. We'll just unfeed it. There's a big grommet, or a big plastic clip, I should say, that holds that grommet in place. We can pop that whole plastic clip out from the hole. Finish unthreading this. So here's that grommet holder. You can see there's just a little clip on each side that you can pinch to pull him out. That's what this grommet would hold on to. It's that plastic. Should be another one up here. So if we pull this grommet off, that one came out nice and easy. And there is your door sub harness already pulled. Now we can pull off our mirror. Now whether you have power mirrors or deletes or these manual mirrors, the process is mostly the same. There'll be a screw holding on this panel. This one's been replaced at some point because it's not quite the right screw, but doesn't matter too much. With that done, this will pop off. You can see somebody has tried to glue this one on in the past. No matter though, with him out of the way, then under all this glue, there should be some screws holding the mirror in. We've got 1, 2, 3. I'm just gonna go ahead and undo those straight through the glue. Sometimes for power mirrors, these bolts can be a little seized, so make sure you're taking care. If they're getting kind of stuck, don't break them off. Get some heat on it a little bit. Get a bit of fluid film, something to help bust them free. Now we can grab the whole mirror. And it just comes straight out, just like that. There'll also be a rubber gasket for it. This one appears to be missing, but it would have had a nice little rubber gasket on there. Make sure you keep that with the mirror. Now for these door seals, I'm back to my pick. We're just gonna lift up the edge a little bit, and you will see right in here, there's a little yellow plastic clip. I'll try to zoom in some here. Right there, dead center, is a little tab. That tab's what you need to push towards the inside of the door to release, and then we can pull it up. And there you can see it pop up and out, just like that. And it clips itself back in immediately. These are easy to break and impossible to find, so I suggest doing this slowly. So the next one's already started to pop up. Again, we're gonna try really hard not to break these. Just like that, it is out. The outside channel, same deal. Only difference is the clips are gray instead of yellow. So I just got done pulling this one out, and I broke almost every single clip. So you can see this one's still intact at the middle section right there. But this one, as soon as I pressed it, snapped off, because this is the side that faces outside. They get really brittle. That one's good. Broke that one, broke that one, broke that one. So just try to take time, take your precautions. Only thing left on the inside of the door is this window channel here, which John Glenn sells replacements for. I would highly recommend replacing them. This is probably the #1 reasons why your window is hard to roll up and down. The regulators themselves can go bad, but that channel, losing all of its fuzzy fur, is like a big part of it. So we're gonna start up in the corner where it's already pulling out. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull it out. It sits inside of a steel channel. This one is part of the door, but up front, this steel channel is actually replaceable. There's a bolt holding it on down in the corner. That bolt holds on the channel that holds that seal in place. So you can actually pull that off as well. You don't necessarily need to. There's not necessarily a reason for this, but this is, after all, a full assembly video. So I'm gonna show you how to remove everything, including these little channels. So once that bolt's undone, it will slide down, and then we can pull it out from this hole. And once again, there's the whole thing. That's where that bolt's screwed in to hold it to the door. And this little hooky tab here, that is what hooks it up into this front section. Back to freehand mode, so pardon any wobbling. Now we're gonna try to remove the steering column. I went ahead and unplugged all the plugs for the ignition. Those just go down here. They're clamped onto this little clamp, and they plug in right here with this main harness. So I just unplugged them, unclamped it, moved them out of the way. Looking straight up, you can see there's a bolt here, another one on the other side. Then I'll try to get down to the bottom here, and there we can see another bolt, or nut I should say, right here. Same thing on the other side that I already pulled earlier. And then there's this big U-joint looking thing right here. We'll need to undo that bolt right there. So that involves turning our steering column, which has no steering wheel on it currently. So let me see if I can do that with a pair of pliers real quick. All right, I got it turned enough so that we can get to the one on the bottom side. So we're gonna go ahead and get our 12 up in here and undo that. And now this nut, I just left loose because this is actually a slot right here. It's slotted, so it just comes out with the nut still there. Coming back up top, pop the other bolt all the way out, because I'm just holding it up out of the way. Now the column will drop. I'm just gonna grab the column, pull it straight out, and it should pull that shaft off of the steering rack. There it is. So there's that U-joint assembly. There's where it goes down on the rack. You can see there. There it is. It slides onto that shaft of the rack. That's going to give us a lot more room to show you guys everything else you need to remove down here. Again, that column and most of the stuff we're going to be doing in this next bit, from the ECU, pedal box, etc., all of this can be done with the dash in. Just a little more annoying and pretty much impossible to film. So mostly for the sake of this filming, we'll be doing all of that with the dash pulled off. We've got a plug up here for our clutch switch and a plug right here for the brake switch. If I undo both of those, move our radio here out of the way, I can scoot this harness over, and now we have a much better idea what we're looking at. So we'll just pan down for a second. You can see here we have our clutch, our brake, and our gas pedal. And then we go up. This is the pedal box assembly. As you can see, it's kind of surface rusted. And right there, dead center, you'll see 4 nuts. Those are holding the brake booster. So those are studs that hold the brake booster in place. Now, I will try to zoom in for a second to show you right now before I start pulling it off. But there in the middle, that is the pin right here that holds in the clevis for the brake booster. So this little fancy pin gets pulled out, then that pin slides out of the way, we'll undo those 4 bolts, and then remove the brake booster. Then we can focus on pulling the entire pedal box. I want to do that now, that way it's out of the way, and this is one of the tougher jobs, one of the more annoying jobs, especially on automatic. It's not as bad in the manual. As you can see, the pedal is dead center, and then we have bolts on the one side, nuts on the other side. On an automatic, the pedal covers those 2 pretty good. So even with a nice wobbly extension, it is a pain to get in there. But for now, 12 millimeter, the impact, and our long wobble extensions should be able to zip it out, no problem. Just using the pick for that. It's kind of a funky shaped clip, but comes off pretty easy. And now from the engine bay side, I should be able to pop that booster out, no problem. All right, I got it pulled partially out. The rest of it will have to wait until we undo the brake lines. Now we can look at what is needed to pull the pedal box out. First, over here on the left, this is the clutch switch itself. So I will unplug him. Then we have a stud holding the pedal box on right here. And then going towards the top, there is a bolt here and a bolt here. And if I remember correctly, somewhere in here is also our clutch cable. We already undid the cable from the transmission side. That's gonna make it a lot easier to remove. You guys can't really see it, but the end of the clutch cable is up top. You can remove that now if you don't have it pulled from the transmission, but I think I'm gonna remove it as is and then show you guys how to pull it. That way it's a lot clearer on video, otherwise it looks kind of confusing. Here we go. Got it pulled down. And now I'll try to turn it while it's still here. Our clutch cable is held in the back here by this grommet. I'll pull it through a couple inches. That way we can see right here on the assembly. This is where the clutch pedal is. So we have this piece right here. We actually don't need to unclip any pins here. That is static. Instead, there's this little clip here, which very similar to the brake line clips, very similar to the door lock clips. We just need to get our screwdriver in there and pop him out. Just like that. And now this whole assembly can pop out, and then we will move it forward and it will unclip. And you can see there on the pedal where we're gonna clip that, it's literally just an open hole. And now the pedal box is free. Zoom back out here. There we go. One pedal box. I'll pull him out. And now you can see there is your clutch cable and there is the clevis from the brake booster. While we're down here, we should pull our throttle pedal. So for an AC car, you will typically have a switch here called the wide open throttle switch. That will tell the car when the pedal's pressed all the way, it will turn the AC off. Since this is a dealer AC, it was not installed, no big deal. There is a 12 mil right here, another one right there, and then the clip for the throttle cable is up top. To get him out, you literally just pop this little blue thing towards you and then up. So pedal. That's where our cable clips into, and you can kind of see here how that clip would look. It just clips right into the back of this. And I have brand new throttle cables available on the Festiva store. Definitely recommend them. They're pretty nice units. While we're here though, we will go ahead and unclip the throttle cable. So if I zoom in, up in there, you will see there is a little clip. We just pinch these tabs and it will shove out through the front. Out it goes. This is also where your speedometer cable clips in. I have a short video explaining how to reroute this for a TAC cluster. I would recommend watching that. But for now, same deal. We will push its clips through, so that way we can pop it out the firewall without breaking anything. I will unroute it. And out the hole it goes. All right, now that all the pedal stuff is removed and the dash is out, we can start working on the ECU and wiring harness. Once again, you can remove the ECU with the dash in place. It's just tricky. I'll go ahead and show you kind of what that looks like. So you have these two big plugs on the bottom. We'll go ahead and unplug those and move those out of the way. There is a reusable zip tie here, another one here that holds a harness in place underneath of it. I'm gonna go ahead and unzip tie those just to get them out of our space. You can leave them in place. Now, the ECU is held on to this bracket with these two 10mm bolts. So with a ratchet, you can get in here with the dash in place. You simply unscrew those. And now this whole ECU will lift up off this little hook on the top. So we just push it up, pull it back down. There you go. This little tab right here hooks onto that sheet metal. So just wiggle it up and then pull it down. It will pop right off this bracket and you can pull it down, even with the dash in place. Now we can go ahead and take these two out, get the hanger out of the way. And here we can see the rest of our relays. We have the buzzer. So this is the key buzzer. A lot of you will find this is already deleted on your car because they're very annoying. The green one is for your hazards and your turn signal. And the gray one is the horn relay. So that's the relay that makes your horn work. These are all on little holders up here in the metal. So they have little tabs. You can just kind of push on the tab and pull those off. This one will slide towards the inside. And that one slides towards the inside. And there's a ton of other tabs up here. If you wanted to add more relays, if you do any sort of modifications or a turn signal flasher, stuff like that, you can zip tie or hang the relays up off of these. There's a space for a lot more. So here's all those relays unplugged. We have the rest of the dash harness that we unplugged earlier, including the fuse box. This is where the dash plugged in. If we come back across, we have the cluster plugs up here, and they have a clip holding them into the metal. We'll pop that clip out real quick, like so. And then turn the light a little bit, come back over here. It's a little hidden by this tube for the defrost. I will go ahead and pull this defrost tube out of the way. Now we can see a bit better into this gap. I'm gonna move the camera some. We have our AC system plugs and the HVAC plugs. So that top plug is for the actual resistor pack for the blower motor, and then you have the blower motor plug itself. So I'll just unclip those. Now that we have these unplugged from the AC, here was the optional one that plugged into the AC system. So if you don't have AC, this will be just sitting there chilling. If you do have AC, that would have been part of the dash harness that we already pulled. Cluster plugs here. They go up to a reusable zip tie up in the top corner. We'll go ahead and undo that zip tie. And another clip here. Usually you can pop it out like so. Now we have a harness in this top corner. This goes to your Autobelts and your Domelight. If you have an 8889, it would just be the Domelight. Move him out of the way for now. Then we have this big bundle of wires, including this round point right here. We will go ahead and unbolt that. And then our fuel pump relay, which I will just unplug for now. You can tell it's a fuel pump relay because it's the only big yellow plug in the car. Oh, or I'll just slide off the bracket. That's also fine. That bracket, we can stay here. The bracket unscrews with a Phillips. Now, I will see if I get you guys a better angle of what all we are looking at in here. All right, now with that fuel pump relay out of the way, our ground unplugged, the rest of our relay is moved. You can see here, this is the main harness that goes into the engine bay. There's our grommet back here. I went ahead and popped it off that hanger so you can see that. These two white plugs, that is where the harness connects to the rest of the car. So this is like your fuel pump wire, your tail light wiring, your turn signals, all the hatch stuff, all of that connects to the fuse box and everything up here. So we can unplug these two. And then I can undo this little cord wrap holding it in place. Just this little metal tang basically. And then this is the body harness. I can pull him down, get him out of the way. What we're left with is just the main loom for the car that goes up to the engine bay through this big fat grommet right here. And later on, I will take you to the engine bay and we'll take the fender off to continue pulling this the rest of the way out. Basically this grommet will just shove through that hole forward and all this will come out with it, along with our hood release cable right here. It has a nut on the back side. We simply undo that nut and then this will drop down. We can pull it through as well. All right, so we just loosen that big nut on the back of the cable here, slide it off. This whole thing now sneak forward a little bit. There it is. Pop it out, the little holder there. So now it can be pulled through when we pull through the rest of the harness. Down here, you can also see this is the nubbin for the radio antenna. This cord would be tucked all in the dash up to the radio with this little plug on the end of it. Now that we have the dash out and the radio unplugged, we can come outside the car here in a bit and unscrew the antenna and pull it out. That's what it looks like when it's installed. That's the end where the antenna would fold all the way into this tube. All right, next we're gonna go ahead and remove the body harness. So this is the harness that we unclipped previously, those two big white plugs going to the main loom. It runs through the entire body, all the way back to the taillights and wraps back around. To get this out, we're going to be undoing mostly a bunch of clips. Just like right here, you can see where it's clipped to the body with some tape. Pop him out. Then all these clips along the ground here, along with a couple of pieces of this foam tape, it is held in with these big wiring harness holders. These you can just separate and pop it out and leave the clips in place. Another one there, more of them here. Then we hit one of our first branch points. This is where that big seatbelt control box was plugged in before. We have a ground wire here, it's a 10 mil. We're gonna go ahead and undo him. There we go. Undo the tape. Again, tape to some clips. We'll pull those clips out or break the tape off, whichever comes easiest. These are still available new online pretty easily. I can link them down below. Both this tape-on style clip and the reusable zip tie style clips, all still available. Now, looking kind of down into here, you can see we got more of this foam tape that we can pull off. This plug here, those ones that go to the seat belts. This one goes to the other seat belt on the other side. Keep pulling up. Under this piece of tape, this was the wire that goes to your e-brake. That turns the e-brake cable light on. More foam tape that we can pull up. Keep going back. Keep going back. We go to the second branch up here. This comes up to our fuel pump. You can tell this has never been replaced. The fuel pump's never been messed with this car because it's still taped down from the factory. Very cool. I feel kind of bad being the first person to break the tape open, but we can unplug it there and leave the rest of the fuel pump in place. We will show that part later. Then keep going across under the e-brake cable here for this harness. This is one that plugs into the motor for the seatbelt and that door switch we talked about that turns on the dome light. This bracket's kind of in the way. We'll go ahead and pop him off with that Phillips. This is part of the e-brake removal. To remove the e-brake cable, we'll be covering that more later on. But for now, I'm just gonna try to bend it out of the way so we can get the harness through, like so. Then coming back to the front where we branched off. Here, the whole thing is loose. I can stick that right out the side. More of the holders here, another one here. I'm just gonna keep unfolding those to pop it out of place. Then we have our next motor plug. This is the driver's side motor, which I hadn't pulled yet, but we can go ahead and unplug it, no problem. he says.
I hate clips.
And same for the wire for the door switch. Once again, we'll just reach in there and unplug him. Now the harness is back here. We have this ground wire that grounds to that panel. Go ahead and pop that ground off. That's part of that harness down there. Now the rest of the harness sneaks up behind all this towards the back. It's not really clipped in back here, it's mostly just tape. So we'll have to undo the rest from the back and pull it all through towards the front. So we'll keep looking over towards the taillight back here. I'll go ahead and back there go to plug that. So back here by our taillight section, right above our strut, we have that fuel pump switch we talked about. That has its own plug. We should be able to unplug that. We'll go ahead and just pop the whole thing out though while we're here. Unscrew it. The plug's a lot easier to get to from the back side once it's off. Like so. There's the plug. See if we can just pop it off real quick. And there were our speaker plugs. Normally there'd be a standard Mazda plug, but somebody just cut on these universal style ones. That's fine, that should fit most speakers. Then up here in this gap, we got this big piece of blue tape. Under that blue tape, there's 1 to 2 plugs. This powers everything in the hatch harness. So the hatch, if you have a wiper and defrost, you'll have this plug plugged in. Otherwise, the brake lights, license plate lights, etc. are on this other plug under the tape. So we'll peel that tape off, and we'll go ahead and unplug that guy. Like so. I can see right here, there's a clip holding the harness to the body. We'll pinch that through.
Where is that?
Now, there's some mouse damage up in here, so you can see where mice have getting the wiring harness and been getting to just living in here, and the rust, of course, that's ever present on this car. The taillights we will leave plugged in to the thing. We will just unplug their plug here. You can see I went ahead and just pulled it out of its holder, so that big fat white plug, all for taillights. Go ahead and take care of that. I'm gonna reach in, make sure this one's loose. Still taped down in one spot. We'll just keep going, untaping all this as it runs across the back. Another ground point. Easy. Next section, tape off, tape off, tape off. And then, wow, I pulled on that and actually just pulled the metal off the car. That's how rusty this car is. You can see just the absolute separation up in there. Anyway, I guess we're taking the metal with it, since getting that clip off is going to be kind of hard. That counts. This is what's left of the hatch light, the cargo light. Then we have our other speaker plug here. This plug is for the rear washer tank. So if you have a Festiva with a rear wiper, your washer tank will be sitting here. So you unplug it from here, and you unscrew the washer tank from here. I'll have to show that in a separate section later on a car that actually has it to show you guys how to remove it. Then, same thing as always, we unplug our taillight harness. Now, we can begin the process of fishing that all back up towards the front. So if I reach my hand in here, and I can see there's part of the harness there. I can feel it still taped on. I'll put a glove back on before I scratch the crap out of my hands. I think we'll go ahead and pull off our fuel access panels here, just to see if we can afford a better view of all this. And sure enough, there's our other clip. So we can go ahead and unclip him. just like that. I believe we now have one complete body harness. All right, there it is. It stinks. I'm not gonna hold it so close to my face anymore. All right, next we're gonna go ahead and remove the front end of the car. So headlights, corner lights, turn signals, bumper, grille, the whole shebang, and that'll give us a lot more access to the AC parts and the wiring harness. So we're gonna start off with just the corner lights. Those are just Phillips, or JIS in this case. One there in the middle, and then 2 on each side. Once those are out, you can kind of pull out some, and then you can untwist this bulb right from the holder. You can also unplug it from its plug deep inside here, this big plug here, but they're kind of a pain to deal with. So I think I'll save that for later and just unscrew it from that for now. This is also how you would access this to change the bulb. Next, we're gonna need to go ahead and get the grill off to get to all of these bolts. So there is one Phillips dead center under the emblem. We take him out. Once that's out, there are some grill clips that we'll need to release. Come up top, you can see how to release those. So these are the clips that hold in the grill. There's a little tab down inside of here. Basically all we do is push down on that tab and that should release the grill. Like that. And there are 6 of these in total. We have 4 across the top. All get pushed down. That one was missing, obviously, and apparently so is the bottom one. And then there's one more hiding down here that goes into where the headlight sits. You can get it from the front side. If you come down here, you'll have a good idea of what we're pushing at. You can see there's like a square slot. I am just pushing this guy up. That way it releases in that square slot. Now we can take our grill, pop it out. If your car has broken clips or missing clips, you can get these on the Festiva store right now. We sell them in a whole pack of 6. Place them all at once. Good deal. With those out of the way, we can now look at our headlight here. The headlight is held in with 4 10mm bolts, 1 in each corner basically. This one down here is a little special because it also holds on this bracket, and this bracket, its entire purpose is just to hold this clip that holds the grill in. Another one on this corner. So we can go ahead and zip those off real quick. As soon as you want to do this one, this bracket will pop off. It is only retained by a little pin that sits in there and holds it steady. And that one bolt, there's a left and right version of these, so don't get them mixed up. They're also stamped L and R, so you can't lose them. And before we pull it out, we're gonna need to take the bulb out. So on the back side, you can unplug the light bulb with this plug right here. If your plug is stuck or this tab's broken, as they very often are, you also have the option of just pulling the bulb out. This is a headlight locking ring. You just spin this ring off and then the bulb will pull off. Still in the plug, no problem there. All those unscrewed, the headlight just pops out, just like that. We will repeat the process for this side and then we can go ahead and pull off the bumper. Okay, so we're down here by the driver's side front wheel to finish taking off the bumper. That involves get rid of a lot of stuff up here. It'll be slightly different for 88, 89 cars, but for EFI cars, your washer tank is down here for the windshield. So you gotta get that out of the way to access the nuts. So we're gonna start off by taking off this plastic thing. That is a screw up here at the top. One up in here. One right here. And there will be a plastic push pin on the very bottom front corner that is missing on this car, so we'll just pop it out. It would have been down here. While we're here doing some screws, there's also one holding it to the fender up top. So I'm gonna go ahead and go up in here and pull that out. This actually comes with a little holder. I'm gonna pull the holder out. That big plastic washer. This is special for the bumper, so don't lose this. Little combo here. Next, we got a bunch of 10 mils we need to take care of. We'll start off with down here. This is the bumper brace, a little metal tab. There's a 10 here, and also one holding the body. I like to take the body one out just because it's less likely to break or tear out the plastic of the bumper. Like that. So now this is free. Then we have to get our reservoir out of the way. There's two 10mm nuts up here and one holding the whole thing in the body up front. Pop those out. Now this will be connected to a tube up top, so we just pull it down and it will pop off that tube. Like so. So there's a big gasket here that tube sits in. There's also the plug that we want to unplug from up top to get it out, but this one is stuck, so I'm just gonna leave it for now. And then there's also a little clear hose that comes down to your washer motor for your fluid to come through. That tube is missing on this car, so we'll ignore that for now. I'll just set this down. What we really want in here for the bumper are these two nuts. So there's one here, one right above it, up in there. Those are both 14. And these are special nuts. They are for the bumper exactly. They have a different thread pitch than most, so try to save these, don't lose them. So there's two here. There's a total of 3 holding the bumper on each side. The 2 are out here. There's one more in the engine bay, so we'll pop it up there real quick. Down here in the engine bay, right there, we have the last one, so we'll get him pulled out. We'll repeat the same process on the flip side. Then we can come to the front. The turd signals, these are unscrewed, but we can leave them in the bumper. What we need to focus on is the plug for them. So earlier we took out our headlights and our corner lights. The corner light would sit in this hole. There's a second wire here that's kind of threaded through the headlight bucket or through this metal piece. If we pull them out, you'll find the plug for that. That's your turd signal plug. We will just unplug it from here. Plug that back in. There's a cord. It should be routed through some of this metal, so we'll just route it so it's a little bit looser. Like that. Now you can see the turn signal's all loose down in here. We'll just leave that cord there. Then on the very bottom of the bumper, there will be some clips pinning it to the sheet metal. On this one, the clips are already gone. There's one of the holes that would be in. That'd be clipped up to here. And then there's one clip holding it in right here. Again, I can see that clip on this bumper is just not there. So from here, we should be able to pull the bumper straight out towards us since it's all those studs. So just want to pull the studs out of the body. We already loosened the other side, so the whole thing should just come off towards us. Like that. Same on this side. And there you go. That's the whole front bumper. And so there's those studs we were pulling off earlier. So the 2 on the outside and the one on the inside of the bay. And the turd signals are going to stay with the bumper. With that out of the way, we can now start to take out the rest of our AC system that we didn't pull with the engine pull. And with the AC stuff out of the way, we can start pulling the engine bay wiring harness that's tucked up under this little metal channel right here. So with the bumper out of the way, you can see now kind of where we were at when we did the Core Sport mod video, which you haven't seen. You should. Great mod. Anyway, now we'll go ahead and take off our hood latch and this little brace, and then we can start taking out the AC stuff. So for the hood latch, we'll take off the brace first. It's actually a little separate piece, so we come off with the center nut here. And the nut just on this side, or the bolt, I mean. Like that. And then down here on the bottom, you'll see there's one here. And you can technically do this with the bumper on. Again, this makes it way easier though, everything's out of the way. So he's out. Then we have our hood cable in here. One more bolt. I'll go ahead and unbolt it. And then we can get our cable out. So if you come down close, you can take a peek in here and see kind of how the cable sits in there, and it pulls on stuff in here, and that moves around, all sorts of fun stuff. But what we need to do is slip this cable. So this would sit like this. We gotta slip this cable down to release it from this little clamp, like so. So you can see that notch. I just pulled it out of that notch. Then looking in down inside there, there's the ball. It would just slip in there and go in that little gap like that. So that's what we're doing. So slip that out. Now our latch is free, just like that. Then we take the AC out. There's quite a few different AC systems for Festivas. They all mount their own special way. For the most part though, there'll be something bolting on up here, and then it'll either sit in little holes down here or it will bolt down here. Mostly just sits in holes. So after we pop these out, this whole thing should just tip back and pop out. This will probably need to be unplugged. Looks like we have one line here that needs undone, a hard line. Then this hard line can stay because it goes in. This line, we already unhooked for the compressor, so it can stay. So I'll get a line wrench, I'll pop that off, and then we can pull this out. You can pause. Like that. This line's also held in with some P-clamps and held into the box up here. So anyway, so now this line should pop out from there. We go back to the front, take out our 10 here. Another one here. Looks like this one is a little too tall for the car to fit correctly, so I'll go ahead and pop off these as well. Again, this will vary by Festiva. There's a whole lot of different systems that were used over the years. Now, this whole thing looks like it can tip back. I'll tip it straight towards the back. And then I can lift it up. Down here you can see where it sat in these little holes up front with some rubber mounts. And it is out. I'm gonna place this somewhere kind of safe because we don't want to dent up these fins too much. The more airflow we get in here, the better. Then I'll go get the right wrenches to pop that line off, and we'll undo these two P-clamps. This bolt is actually broken on this car. It's stripped out, so I can't get it pulled out. I'll have to cut that one. We can pull that one out, and we can go ahead undo that. Maybe while we're in here, we can undo the thing holding this relays on, because it's part of the AC. And I want to keep all the AC parts together on this car. So I'll go ahead and get our 10 in here and start undoing stuff. There's our AC harness. Comes all the way up into here. Looks like I can keep popping out. Somebody put a zip tie on it. We'll have to snip that tie. Comes all the way up to where the fan plugs in. This is the plug for the relay system. All Festivas should have the wiring for the AC, just unused if you don't have it. And this harness is what you would add in to add your AC in. Just plugs up in there. We'll take off this line. Looks like we need a wrench for that. Okay, with this bolt magically fixed, this line undone, super easy, it wasn't a battle at all. And this bolt out, which is also very easy, not a battle at all. We can take our AC line out. Now I can also go ahead and undo the zip tie with the side cuts I didn't grab. Wow, Hollywood magic, side cuts. We go ahead and undo the zip tie. And there's our AC harness, which we'll finish in the car later. We're looking up behind the passenger headlight area. So there's the headlight cord, your VAF cable, corner light. Down here, this is the relay for your parking lights. So that controls your dash lights, your tail lights, and your parking lights. That little relay is hidden back in here. We got a big ground point. So go ahead and pull that ground cable out, the 10 mil. Just like that. The relay is held in with a JIS Phillips. We'll go down this corner here. And now you'll see there's a zip tie here, and this is one of the ones we're not gonna cut, but instead we're gonna look over here on the back side. I will pull this release tab. That undoes it. Now you can see we can pull it out. Come back to the front for a second. Behind our bumper is our horn. So for base model cars, you'll have one horn under the passenger headlight behind your bumper that has this plug here. You should just be able to pinch that and have him pop off. Like so. It's got a little waterproof cover on it. It's been routed behind this rubber, so we'll sneak it behind those real quick. These are just clips. You can pull around them. Sneak that back into the body. If you have a higher trim car, like an LX, you actually have two horns. So now that's part of the harness free. Here is that zip tie we were looking at earlier. They clip into the body. You can see here, if I put this in, it clicks. And then here is the release tab. So we just pulled down on that little tab, and now it can release. Those are all over the body. So from here, we want to keep undoing our main harness for the engine all the way across. Those reusable zip ties are hidden under here. You can see like these little black tips. Those are the tips of those push-ins. For these, I actually prefer to leave the zip ties on the harness. So I take some pliers, or very carefully our side cuts here, and we'll just pinch that little black tab so that it can pop down. Super simple. With our 10, I'll take out this bolt here. This little tab holds on the neck for our washer tank. We dropped the washer tank earlier when we were doing the bumper, so now that assembly just pops out. out of the way. Looking down here in the harness, we had to unplug all of this when we did our engine removal. This is the cord that goes to the washer reservoir pump that we mentioned earlier. So we just unplug him, drop him through. Then all of these plugs go to our sub harness. So this sub harness here goes to your battery, goes down to your ground cable, and this goes to the back of the engines and the alternator with your fuse block on it. This is actually a sub harness. It's not part of the main harness. So we'll separate those real quick by just unplugging all these plugs. This one big single wire here. This big fat white wire is what feeds your internal fuse box for the car, the dash fuse box. That's why it's so thick. And then all of these get unplugged. There we go. So here's the sub harness separated. Back to the big harness. We have our headlight relay and cooling fan relay down in here, held in with Phillips. We have our hood release cable stuck in here still, and the rest of our main harness. So we'll keep removing all that. The hood release cable comes out much in the same way that the main harness does. Go back to the front real quick, and you will find, instead of them being black, we have these little small white clips that stick out. Those are the ones that hold in the release cable. Main harness, pretty loose now. I see another one of our releasable zip ties right here, so I will go ahead and try to release him. Just like that. There's our marker light, main harness. Now you can see down here, there's that ground point that we can undo with a 10, and then the 2 Phillips. This is one of those screws where the correct JIS screwdriver is like a must, because how stuck they get in here. While we're here, I'm going to point out that the TheFestivaStore sells both of these, the headlight relay and the cooling fan relay. We have these available OEM, and these are aftermarket and nice and cheap. But it's easy to tell them apart because the cooling fan relay is blue. The relay is blue and the plug is blue. Blue because it's cool, cooling fan. And your headlight relay is this one. Now we'll go ahead, since we got the front clips, everything undone, we can start unclipping stuff from the back. So we have a plug here to the coil that needs undone, like so. Little zip tie thing holding it on, should be able to pop him out. Then this one unplugs. And again, it sits on a clip. Back to just pushing the tabs in and carefully pulling it through, like so. Then our ignition module unplugs here, like that. Then the wiper motor, also controlled by this harness. There's another one of our reusable zip ties right here. So I'm going to try to undo him without breaking it, like that. We come up here, there's one connector taped to that plastic. Let's pull him off, undo the solenoid. This brown one will already be not connected. It's not used on our cars. And then we have all of our test connectors down here. So like that's the STI plug. This is for a reader that we don't use anymore. This is your fuel pump tester. That white one's the tach tester. All those are undone. Now our whole harness is free, and now it starts to go into the fender well. So to get to that, we're gonna need to remove the fender. To remove the fender, this one might be a little special because A, there's too much rust, and B, it has a mud flap. So the mud flaps have an extra little bracket that holds them on. So we're gonna try to get these absolutely awful looking screws out of here. All right, but like I said, you can see the hole down here. So there's one bolt holding the fender in right here on the very bottom. There's no way in heck that's coming out with any of the tools I have right now. But I can see the only thing holding that fender on. Oh wait, no, it's not holding any of the fender on. That's just nothing at all. Great. Then behind the mud flap, I'm gonna peel it back a little bit for a second. You can see we have 2 screws here that hold on our fender liner. So we'll go ahead and pop those out. And now I can see, due to the rust, the fender is literally not held in the bottom at all, which is just wild. Then right here, we have a screw holding the fender liner in. But again, due to the rust, you can see where the screw is. Where it's supposed to screw into is just that. So never mind that. There's another screw here. It's missing, so that makes that easy, doesn't it? There's another screw right here. Let's see if I get some light. So we got one here. Wow, that came out. Can't believe it. Then we have another one straight up. a little less likely to come out, but again, give it the old college try. Oh, I think it started. There we go. There was the one in front that we already got for our front flap, and now the whole liner should just drop down. There we go. There's the liner out. Now if we come take a peek again, looking straight up into it, you will see our engine harness. There it is going to the body with the big grommet. There's some extra ones going back by the brake booster that we unplugged earlier. And there's the rest of it going up towards the front with its big bracket. But just to make this job nice and easy, we're gonna finish taking the fender off first. So while we're down towards the bottom, we're gonna go up front. Now that our bumper is off, we've unveiled this 10 mil here. Hopefully it's not rusted to the body. Rough. Came out though. Then we have a Phillips up front. Now, if the Phillips on these strip out, you can also use an 8 mil socket because they are still hex, which is nice. This little eyeliner piece should come out next for us to help get us out. You can leave this in and just pop out this plastic insert to get the fender out, kind of rotate it around it, but just to avoid scratching stuff. We'll come back to the front where our headlight eyeliner is. The headlight eyeliner has two Phillips there, and then one bigger bolt here. This is actually a Phillips or JIS number 3, not a number 2, but number 2 gets her done. So now that pops out. There's that plastic nut that goes into the fender. So he's out of the way. Then up front, while we're here, there's our next bolt, just like that. You could technically leave that one in and just loose because it just slips onto that for alignment. This is how you help align your fender gap, is using this bolt here. Then up top, we have 3 in a row holding it on the top side. This is easy to see because we removed the door earlier, but very sneaky. You have to open your door all the way. There's a bolt over here, sneaking right in there. So a long extension of the door open. We'll get this one, and again, we can just loosen this one halfway out, and the fender is on a slot. So now the fender should just slot off. And there it is. And you can see why that bottom bolt at this point didn't matter. That's supposed to be metal here. That screw, you can see why it didn't come out. Anyway, now we have a great view of the rest of our harness. There is our hood cable, which we already undid, so he should be fairly loose compared to the rest of the harness. It even has its own clip here, and that goes into the body over there. Then the main harness, same deal. We can pop him out of the clip. It comes through this hole here, a 2-hand deal. I feed it with this hand, pull it some with this hand. We're just trying our best not to rip off any connectors or any cables. Firm but gentle. Just like that. All right, I'll readjust our light here. We can come down here and give a peek inside. Now you can see another clip here. It's got a clip that just basically you push up on the edge and it undoes like that. From then we can pull out our harness that goes to all the stuff that was up by the firewall. Just like that. Now I can come back into the car. Now we're back in the car. This is where our ACU was hanging. We already took that out. Move this cable out of the way. You can see right there, that's our big rubber grommet. And then this big stack of wires here is the rest of our body harness, fuse box, everything else. Now, due to the size of our fuse block, all this harness has to come into the car instead of going through the engine bay, even though this is the shorter section. So we'll just come in here. If you pull, give it a good yank, you can see I've already started to undo that grommet. There we go, grommet undone. And now, again, I'll just 2-hand this, helping my lovely camera woman. We will wiggle this whole thing back into the car. just like that. Come out and pop back out here. We will look at our prize. Our prize is 14 feet of Festiva wire connectors and relays. Ta-da! There you go, weight savings. This is a good 15 pounds right here. There you go, so that's your entire Festiva engine and main harness. That's fuses, power, dash, all the good stuff, starting from all the way from your cluster and your blower motor, all the way back to the relays and VAF in the other corner of the car. But we're not done in the engine bay. We still have that power sub harness to pull out, and on the inside, we still have all the dash stuff to pull out. So we will keep on trucking in. Next, we will get our master out, and that way we can finish removing the booster. We already undid the nuts from the inside, so it's loose, which is actually a little on the annoying side, but it's fine, we'll make do. And I'm gonna recommend a very special tool for everybody. I'm sure some of you by now have heard of flare wrenches to take off brake lines and stuff, but I found this beautiful ratcheting flare wrench. This makes getting stuck Festiva brake lines off so much nicer because you don't have to sit there and keep taking it back off, worry about stripping it. It's got a ton of good contact. The flex head makes it super easy to reach stuff. So we were gonna use this to go ahead and take off our master cylinder. Well, this is supposed to be in the car, but since we already bolted it, might as well take it out. So there's the master and booster combo, all out as one. If your booster is looking this sad, or has a tear in it, or you just generally think it's about time for a replacement, we have these available new on the TheFestivaStore. To get the master off, you just take off these two 12mm nuts. But since that's kind of self-explanatory, I got other stuff to do, we'll move on. Next, we'll go ahead and take out our evap canister. So this is for the fuel system. There's a charcoal canister that absorbs from the fumes. It has its own solenoid that's controlled up here. A little vacuum line that went to the engine. We'll just take off this whole bracket up here with some little 10mm nuts. This pops off the body. We'll leave it attached to this. I undid the vent line for the gas tank already. This just goes in this metal bracket. If you kind of wiggle it and lift straight up, it should just pop out. There you go. You can see that little wedge. We're wedged into that bracket. There we go. We'll leave the rubber mounts in. Take that whole thing and just get it out of here for now. Then we can see down here our fuel filter. Somebody has tried to replace this or mess with this in the past and done some serious damage to this bracket, but normally there'd be two 10mm nuts here that we would undo. Getting to these is way easier with the master and booster out of the way. Now you can actually see what's going on. I will leave that bracket on there. Here's our clutch cable, which we will finish removing once we are back inside. Then we have all this bracketry up here. It goes all the way to the coil down to there. We'll start from the top side. This is a little noise suppression capacitor. Keeps noise from the engine out of your harness. I'll take him off first. Then back here, another one. Takes off the whole ignition coil. If you want to remove your ignition module, that's actually kind of like an afterthought. It's two Phillips that go down to two little nuts on the bottom side. I like to leave them attached to the bracket just so it's easier to find. I don't want to lose these little guys because they're kind of expensive. We'll come down, two more nuts here. Those are on studs on the body, so that bracket's now ready to come out. One more right here. Allows you to take off. Now I got this off, something's wrong with this car. A little bent up in here, this isn't popping off, so I'll take the pry bar real quick and pop it off. This is supposed to be easy. There we go, it was stuck on these studs. I got a little bent right here, but now that's out of the way. We can see there's another nut hiding back here, and another one going into the shell down here that's kind of hidden. So we will get those both with the 10. Is the other. Now this whole bracket comes out like so. And if you have the need to separate this for some reason or need to clean it up or whatever, there are two more 12s holding this two brackets together, but leave them together for now, totally fine. Now with all that out of the way, we can finish taking our sub harness off. Earlier for our fuse box, we took our Phillips JIS and got these little screws out, so the fuse box is loose. And then we have our ground cable, which comes down to the trans, but first pauses, hits the body right here, another 10mm, so we'll take him out. The rest of this harness we removed from the back of the engine when we pulled the engine out, so you can reference that video for that part. Then we're back to two of our hidden zip ties. Right here's one, so we'll loosen him. There we go. Now we can tuck it back in, reuse it later. And there's one more up here. This one you can loosen here, or now the plastic's out, I can come around on the back side and pinch it and leave it on the harness and clip it back in later. So that's down here by the strut where we took our plastic off. Just give that a squeeze. There is our power sub harness with the fuse box and everything. So now that's out. That is most of what we're gonna remove from the top side. This car has surprisingly decent brake lines for how rusty the car is. We'll probably save a lot of this. To get the rest of the brake lines out, they just clip into some clips here, like that. We have these that go down to the front wheels. These brake lines will undo. They go all the way down to the back wheels. Those are rusted out, so I'm not gonna be pulling those. But the proportioning valve is simply held to the body with two 10s. And these are some of the longest of these M6 bolts in the car, so I try not to lose those. That's the only thing holding that prop block in. So now you can see this is all loose. So we can finish pull that out. Once we get them undone from the brakes. While we're up here, you can also go ahead undo these 14s that hold the struts on. If you're ready to take those out, we're not quite ready for that. I'll be covering the struts and the brakes in more detail when we do the suspension video. So I'll probably leave that for that video instead of this one. And same for the rear struts and the rear brakes on this thing. It is just way too rusty to even consider trying to show you guys how to pull the brakes off or to how to pull the beam off of this. So we'll save that for another car. You can also pull this engine mount out if you need to get in here to clean out any dirt or stuff. That's a bunch of these 12s to pull off this mount, but there should not be any real need to pull that. Next, we're going to take out the wiper assembly. So we'll start by taking the arms off. They have these little plastic caps that just pop up. Really simple. They pivot up like that. And those are 12s, so we'll go ahead and pop both of those off. Now, the wipers are actually splined inside, so I'm just going to pull this up and then wiggle it up. There you go, I broke it free. And if you look close in here, you'll see that this has little splines on it, and this has splines that kind of match. So when you put these on, you just try to line those back up and then tighten it back down. That's why you don't want to twist this a bunch as you pull it off, because you can just mess those things up. It'll slip a bunch later on. Then back in here again, we have this rubber cap. This little rubber piece pops off. And once you're inside, you can see basically how it sits in the cowl now. There's little alignment tabs that hold it in place on each side. You can set a little nub in there. And then there's this big ring on the outside. Get a big socket. We'll pop that nut off on both of them. We can take that big nut off. It's a weird American size, but 24 fits pretty good. It's not under much torque, so just gotta break it loose, and then I can come over here and undo it. It's just basically a really thin jam nut holding this thing in. Like that. Make sure I do the same on the other one. And this cowl panel on a Festiva is not removable. So if you have like a wiper that rusted out, or this piece has collapsed out of the car, you can't really fix that very easily. You have to be able to work within this hole, because all this cowl is welded to the car. It does not unbolt or come out. With those out of the way, we'll come down here to the motor. There's 4 10s holding it in here, and then some of the JIS Phillips on the edge. We'll go ahead and just pop all those out. Now, the entire linkage assembly, all within here, will slide kind of forward. We'll pull it out and come back down. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take this and kind of butt the linkage down. See, there's this little plastic cap looking thing that holds that in place. Do the same thing over here. You see it's just sitting there. We'll just kind of pop it down into the cowl. Now this should pull out. Looks like, oh, there's a little plastic tab here still holding it in place there. Pop that little plastic tab out. There, now you can kind of see, here's the linkage, all that assembly here. The linkage just sits in this tray, so we can push it towards the passenger side all the way so we can see this part. Pull it out. Now the whole thing can slide out towards the driver's side. There you go. That's one complete Festiva wiper motor linkage. You can further take this apart down here if you need to replace any of this, or open this up to replace these super impossible to find bushings. But generally, I like to just keep it as a unit. If you need to replace the motor, you could pop this off and take the motor off these mounts. While we're in the engine bay doing stuff up here, we'll go ahead and also take off this cover. This hides part of the cowl basically. Other countries would have a plate stamped here or on the other side with the VIN and stuff. We don't use those in America. This is also a good time to get in here and clean. As you can see, this one's full of dirt and stuff from the cowl and a bit of a mouse nest. Very gross. We can keep that cap. And then our weather strip for the hood just sits there and clips on the edge. So let's unclip that and peel it off. These can get cut or kind of hot and toasty and brittle over time. So this one's still flexible. It's a good thing to save. Now that the hood's off and the fender's off, we can get to the hood hinges. They just sit here and kind of come under the cowl, but it's only these 2 bolts needed to take them back off. So we can pull these off. If you're putting these back on, might be a good idea to kind of mark where your bolt's at, put some paint on here or something just so you know where to put these back, because this is part of your hood alignment. You can see there's a pretty good spot already marked on here, so it's pretty easy to follow. But now you just pull that up and out from the cowl. There you go, 1 hood hinge. Same process for the other side. Now we're gonna finish taking apart the stuff inside the dash. So we took the dash out already, and again, that wasn't on this video. Please go back and watch the dash removal guide video to see how to take the dash out. It's kind of its own process in of itself. But we've already taken the pedal box out, all that stuff's out of the way. Now we have the rest of this mat here on the Firewall, the heater box, along with all the flaps and stuff for that, the dash vents that go up for the defrost, the evaporator box for the AC, or this would just be a blank tube if you didn't have AC, and finally the fresh air box. So all of the stuff we'll be taking off. We're gonna start up here with the defrost vents. If you have a parts car and these aren't just completely rotted away to nothing from the sun, it's definitely a good idea to pull these. A lot of times they decrode, they get gross, and they just fall apart. These ones are in great shape, so we're gonna remove them. The hard part is getting to this tiny screw up on top. To get to that, we'll do a very similar method to when we remove the dash, where we'll be using a 1/4 drive gear wrench and just a little Phillips bit for the drill. You put that in here, boom. Now you've got a tiny Phillips ratchet. So I'm gonna sneak in here and try to get that screw out with this little connection. I can plug this right here. Success. And then take it out, I'll screw that. And then over here, it's just kind of clipped in by a little edge of plastic. And there we go, 1 defrost vent pulled. Same for the other side. You actually see there's some alignment arrows on this. So you twist this pipe to get it out. This is where it connects to the dash. And down here it connects to the air box, just kind of a stretchy hose. Sometimes it has clips on it. This one has no clip, so I'll just pull that up. And we twist it to unlock it. Just twists out. Do the same procedure for that one. I already got the top one out. Take the side one out real quick. Pull that tab out of the way. There's the one out. And now you can see up here, this mat is held in these little fold over tabs in a lot of places. So like this little piece of metal, I can unfold that and that comes off of there. That's in a lot of spots. And some spots have these little plastic nut things. So these are cool because to get them on, the factory just shoves them down and they click into place. Take them off, you unscrew them. So getting them on, definitely a lot easier than getting them off. Sometimes you gotta kind of pull up or wedge them under it as you unscrew it, but that one's starting to go now. Just like that. There's a couple of those throughout, so we'll be pulling those off. But next, we're gonna try to pull off the evaporator box. So to get the AC evaporator box out, we'll have 2 10s up here, and then one kind of hiding down here on the bottom. So I'll go ahead and just start pulling those out. Then I'll try to get this one out that's holding this little metal joiner in. This piece will vary depending on what system of AC you have. This is the dealer one, so it's an aftermarket system. So it's got kind of this cheesier screw set up here. With that collar open, should be able to pull this through since we already undid the lines outside the car. I got it laying loose here. Now I'm going to pull it towards me to get it off of our fresh air box. There we go. You can see nice and full of mouse debris, of course. Over here, we have more of the cables that plugged up to the top that we can unplug here. That controlled part of the AC controller here. And then we have our wiring harness that currently is going all the way outside the car, along with this little drain hole. Lets the water drain out from the evaporator down here through this tube. So this is a rubber grommet. We can go ahead and pull him out. So these are plugged in down here for that AC harness. The way this harness on this one works is that we have to go through the engine bay first. So I'll unplug both of these, noting which orientation they go in. Then we have the rest of the system here with the fuses and plugs for the dash. We will feed all of that out to the engine bay. Just like that. And I'll go to the engine bay and grab the other side. And that is our full AC harness now pulled. So we'll keep that with all the other AC parts. Now for our fresh air box here, so you can see how that nut used to hold it in place. There's another one coming straight up here into the back. So I will just stick the extension up in there, undo that one. It's another 10. You can see also, if you wanted to, you can just loosen it a bit and have it come out that slot. But either way, that's the fresh air divider. You can see the foam in here looking pretty corroded. Later on, we'll be replacing the foam for this seal, this edge foam here, which you can see has fallen apart, like all in here. And same on our heater box. Again, this foam has just dried up and is flaking off and falling apart. There's actually a good way to replace all of this foam. To replace that, you can just go to your Lowe's, your Home Depot, or whatever, and then with like the mobile AC conditioners, stuff like that, they have just this general foam seal tape. So it's like a big roll of foam with tape on it, meant to seal window edges, garage door edges, AC units, stuff like that. So this stuff is some of it, the almost exact right size and height to act as a replacement foam seal. So you just peel it off, cut it down to the sizes you need, and then you can scrape all this off. You can see it got some of the sticker left behind, but if I keep rubbing all that old tape off, we get down to bare plastic. That is all you need to rub it off. Then we can put this brand new piece of foam right on top. And this one, you see, is flexible enough to actually make the entire curve, so I probably could have done this one piece. And this one looks maybe a little on the thin side, so I will go ahead and just pull another piece off. And then you can even stack it on itself to make a really thick foam gasket all the way around. You can do that on this piece. You can do that for this one up here. Anywhere where you had all this old nasty foam seal, you can replace it with this stuff. It's super cheap. I think that whole roll was $8. So great thing to do if you got a dash out. Go ahead and redo all these seals. Put some on here. It seals up way better in the future. With that out of the way, we can take out our heater box. So for this, we have one nut up here. There should be another one down here on the little wing here. And there's one on the opposite side, basically a mirror image. And then in the engine bay, make sure you have the heater core hoses entirely off. That way it's just the two bare tubes to pull this out. If the hoses are still attached, this isn't going anywhere. And when you pull it out, you kind of want to tip it back because those hoses and the heater core probably still have coolant in them, especially if your car still has some of the carpet in it or stuff you want to keep. You don't want to spill all this nasty brown coolant everywhere. So I'm going to pull it out, tip it back a little bit. There we go. You can see our heater core hoses there. I'm going to pull it out now. And you can see if I had tipped it upside down, all that would have been in the car. So be careful with that. Now, you can also see here on the side how you would remove your blower motor if that were to go bad. On this car, I didn't do that before I pulled it, but you can totally pull the blower motor while this is installed in the car. It's kind of tricky to work around the pedals, but it's not too bad. Those are just 10 mil or Phillips screws to get this out after it's been plugged. And it simply pops out. Has the squirrel cage built in. There's your plug. And it sits on these little offsets on here, so getting it realigned, super simple. You really can't mess it up. And there you go. And up here, where somebody looks to replace this in the past, this is your fan resistor pack. And if you need a new one of these, I actually have these now on the TheFestivaStore. So if your blower motor only works on a couple speeds, that would be your fix. All right, now with all that out of the way, we can finish taking off this Firewall protection mat And then we can take out our clutch cable and the cover for the steering rack. So to get this off, I showed you guys the plastic clip that we took off earlier, all these little tabs. So I'll finish unbending all these little tabs that hold it in place up top. Like that. And then that starts to just unfold from those, up and over the stud. Just like that. I'm gonna put it back up for a second. We've got two more of the plastic nuts up here. Another one in this corner. Oh, in this corner, similar deal, except this one is actually a wire holder as well. So it should unscrew. And up top, just to demonstrate, because I don't want to lose it, to put these back on, you don't have to screw them on, you just push them in. They click in, and now they're on. And then scattered across a few spots, like right here and over there, are little push clips that have Phillips in them. So I'll go ahead and undo those. Now, this whole mat should be good to come down. We got one more of those harness clips up here. That one is very hard to actually unspin due to all the bracketry that's welded through the chassis up here. So we might just have to kind of tear around that one. This actually will split the two sections. So here's the lower section up on these studs. So I'll pull him out first. There we go. That's one part of the mat. The other part, a couple more of those harness clips, help hold the dash harness. That one, up here, here. And I think due to this one being kind of stuck in place, I might just kind of pull it out like so. Now that mat is good to go. Now you can see our clutch cable here. This is a grommet, so I'm going to push this grommet edge in. That way we just pop it out to the engine bay. That's the clutch cable out. Then we've got a couple 12s, a couple 10s holding this plate, and the cover for the steering rack. And this holds the boot in for the steering rack. Now, a lot of people will cut this boot off when they are messing with the rack, just to make it easier to access, but you can do it the right way and not tear this boot up, which I highly recommend. So now I can pull this up and out. There we go. That's one great condition steering rack boot. Normally, if you're trying to take the steering rack out, you'd have to try to access all this stuff as part of the rack. As you can imagine, getting to that, not easy. So people will just take this and take a knife and cut a big slit in it, tear it open to access all that stuff. Now you let water in the car, you're gonna let a bunch of extra noise in the car. When, if you do it right, you can slip the boot out and have all the access you could ever want. And that is pretty much everything on the Firewall pulled. The only other things you might want to keep, especially like in this case, since I'm scrapping this car, I want to keep the little grommets that hold it on or seal up the heater core. So it's that one. Actually, they probably fit better going the other way, so I'll pop them out and grab them in a minute. Then there's another one for the AC drain mirror I took off. And AC lines have their own up here. Pop him out. And then there's an extra grommet hole that's unused on the US Festivas. But if you want to run extra wiring through the passenger fender, there's a big grommet right here that you can poke out and drill holes into. That'll be on the passenger fender, so we can pull him out later. And then we've got a ton of these little plug holes in here. These are a great way to access that lower sheet metal if you need to do any welding or fix anything down there. They're not very good drain holes. You can't really, if your car floods, pulling these won't help anything drain, but they are good rubber plugs. And you can use a lot of these in other spots. So say if your car does not have AC, these plugs fit in this hole to block your AC holes off. Same for the smaller ones, a couple of bigger ones. So I like to pull these and keep them on a parts car. All right, now we're gonna try taking out the headliner. To start, we're gonna go with the Domelight. This one's all messed up, as a lot of the stock ones are. Pretty soon I'll have a video on how to upgrade to the Escort light, but for now, this lens almost just falls off on its own. We got 2 Phillips screws in here. off, you can pull it down, a plug on the back side, you just pull it off these two little pins. Now it's good to go. Then here on the side, we have a little close hook. Same thing, little screw, pop him off. Then all of our little push pins, which we just pinch the middle of. Pull this insert out, and then those pop out. Then, same thing over here. We removed these two pins when we were doing the Autobelt track stuff. Now, we can look up here. We'll take our visors off. That's 2 screws on each side. You can pull those down. They just pop out. And for the rear view mirror, it actually has 2 screws hidden under this cap. Whoops. You just pinch the cap off, revealing 2 screws here. Repeat the same process for the other side. Now, from the back of the car, we're going to take this whole thing down and out through the hatch. So I will just try to peel off this edge. And we're trying to be careful to not bend this. So just grab around the edge, pulling it down. Oh, there we go. The whole thing's starting to fall down. Looks like it's caught a little bit on this front edge. I'll go up front and pull down a little bit. Looks like somebody's tried to glue this at one point. It's not supposed to be glued. There we go. Now I can tip the whole thing at an angle, slide it back. Here's where somebody had glued it up front before. So normally this rubber seal would stay attached to this. I had to pull it off to get it off of the spot they glued up front. It's all right though. I will just push it out. There we go. One pulled EFI headliner. This process is a lot different for the carb cars because they use a stick and thin piece of vinyl inside. So for the carb cars, you'll just have to slowly peel off the vinyl and take the sticks out from the inside. But that's the EFI one at least finish. I can lay that up somewhere flat for now and get it out of the way. Now with the headliner out of the way, we can get the last bit of wiring harness out of this car. That'd be the Domelight and power belt harness. So it just comes up here where the Domelight was. It clips these little clips. We'll leave the clips in the body and just take it out from these little edges. And it comes back across all the way to the passenger side front. We're hooked up to the Autobelts from before. And this is where it would have joined that dash harness we unplugged. Unclip this one. There we go. That's the Domelight and power belt harness. While we're here, we'll finish taking out our shifter. So we unhooked this from the front transmission already. Now it's just sitting here. These 4 nuts are the only thing that keep the rest of the shift linkage in here, along these 2 plastic tabs that we'll just pinch to drop it down. The automatic shifter is held in with a few more bolts because there's a whole assembly here with a cable going under it. That one you take off the brackets first, then the shifter surround comes off, then it'll be a very similar bolt setup, but you'll see that as you take it apart. Then push those tabs in, and the whole thing will just drop down to the ground, or we can retrieve it later. All right, next we can start popping out our rear windows. These are just held in with some Phillips screws going into the panel here and then to the back here. I like to leave the latches and the hinges attached to the glass itself, that way I don't lose them. If you are missing these screws or the fancy caps that hold the window in, these are available from the TheFestivaStore. You also, it's easiest to remove these when this pillar trim is off for the belt. So I showed removing that already. Now that's out of the way, these will pop off. So to get these plastic covers off, they just kind of slide towards us like that. You can see the edges where those would kind of slide back on. So I'll slide that one off, slide the top one off. Then for the back one, we're just gonna pop it open, revealing these 2 screws here. I like to start with the back screws. Now that out, you can see we can open it even further if we wanted to. Now I can come up here. There's this really thick one we can do to take the hinge off. And I'll hold the window from the back, take the bottom one off. I'll hop around to the other side. I will open it and just slide it off. So now I can open it a little past, just pull it straight back. Now it's off. If you want to remove these, it's just more Phillips here, here, and here. And those go into those fancy little buttons that have threads built into them. Those buttons, the little rubber washers, again, all that's available on the TheFestivaStore. Now that that's out, we can take off the seals. The seals are just held into this edge. Just come at the top middle, pull this down like that. Now the whole seal pops out. These are so easy to remove. I actually like to take them off just to clean the car. So like if you buy a Festiva, there'll be a ton of dirt and stuff stuck up in here, a lot of dirt stuck to the seal. Now that we're off, we can go in, we can get this all cleaned off. We can soak it in Aerospace 303 protectant. It'll give you a lot more life on this rubber, keep it nice and soft and pliable. This one you can see is very dry, edges are starting to crack up some, but I think this one can still be recovered if we clean it and protect it. So now we're gonna go ahead and pull out the taillight. We had to switch to a cleaner car because of every stud on the other car breaking, but there are 4 studs holding the light in. There's one in the bottom corner here, this corner, and that corner. So we'll go ahead and pull all these off. Now don't lose these nuts. These are actually special. They have 10mm heads, but they are M5 thread. So you can't replace these with standard M6 nuts. They're actually kind of fancy just for the taillights. So try to keep a hold of these. And now that done, we go to the outside and the taillight should just pop out. Just like that. If your car has water in the back, or if you're taking your taillights off for any reason, there's a good chance your taillight gasket will be completely flogged. Back to the dirty car again. I'm gonna pull out this taillight that's, I don't think, ever been removed before. And you can see we have our old taillight gasket here, and it is completely dry, full of cracks. If your taillight gasket looks like this, it will let water into the car. It will pool up in here and cause a bunch of rust. As you can see, this one's got a lot of mud in here. We're doing exactly that. So these are available brand new in the TheFestivaStore to replace these nasty dried up stock ones that are all cracked and falling apart. So make sure you replace those every time you go to change out your taillights like this. Now we can go back in, start taking apart all the stuff inside the tailgate. We can start out here with our latch. So there's the tailgate latch. I have a whole video about this already. So if you want to see how this works in detail and get an idea of all the locks and stuff, I would highly suggest watching that. I can stay there. And then we'll shut it, go to the inside. To get to the bulb for the third brake light, there are 2 screws on each side. We will unscrew those. If your third brake light is dead or missing, I would suggest keeping an eye out on the Sam Industries Facebook page. We will be releasing our LED third brake light kit soon that replaces this entire assembly. But until then, this is how you get to your bulb. You can see it's in here. It just pops out like that. To get the entire assembly off though, we will put that back in place so don't lose these screws. We can take something to pry with, and this little cover pops off. We just gotta pry these little wings out and then back. So I will try to sneak this in here. Like that. So there you go. There's those clips we were trying to pry out on. They pop off. Then we just have 2 10s. It's hidden under this panel. Much like the door cards, this panel is held with plastic clips. We'll be unclipping. Try to find a good spot from the bottom edge to start prying on gently. There's 1 clip in this corner, so I'll start trying to get down this edge. We'll set him aside. Then we try to peel off our vapor barrier. Whew, a lot of dust in here. Now on a wiper, on a car with a rear wiper, you'd have the rear wiper bolted in here, which you would remove. Its plugs are chilling in here. This one, since it doesn't have all the options, we should have some unused plugs basically coming in for that harness. These are the plugs for the license plate lights, and then this is the plug for the third brake light. We can go ahead and undo him. Pull all this little holder. Now, there's our third brake light out. We will undo the license plate lights in case we can remove those. On this car, I have a feeling they'll be too rusty to actually get the caps off, but just in case, we will be prepared. that. And then for our latch, we have up in here where it's hooked on. I will undo that little hook. And this is the same as the door clips. So if you break this clip, they're available in the store as well. Like that. And then way over here, looking down into it, you can see our door lock. So we pop that clip up. There we go. And this rod pops out. We can go ahead and pop the lock out too, just lifting up on our clip, much like we did for the front doors. And that pop right out. We'll go outside and grab him in a second. Keep our clip. And now, there is our latch assembly popped out. The catch for the latch also held in just with 2 10s. Now pull him out. For this video, I'm going to leave the hatch glass in. I might make a video on its own later showing how to remove this, but it's kind of a pain to do it without tearing up the seal that's no longer available. So I think I'm just going to leave it alone for now. To remove the hatch though, we can start on the inside using our Phillips. We'll take the cap off the strut here, and we can pop the strut off. That opens the cover, and the cover are 2 10s. Now, with that cap taken off, we're going to hold the hatch open. Let's just get yourself a fine helper, because once you have this off, it's just going to fall down. If you do this while it's closed, it'll be under compression. It'll be impossible to get out. So hold it open. Take these 2 out, like that. Then the 2 on the inside. And that is our hatch strut out.
Ooh, so strong.
Now, with that held up, we can go ahead and take off our hatch seal. Similar to the window seal, it just is pinched onto this edge. These are getting kind of hard to find in good condition, so I definitely recommend pulling these and saving these if you have any. Now, with the hatch still held up, we can go ahead and start pulling out the wiring harness. So we unplugged this plug inside the car. When we pull out the body harness, it's just kind of taped to the firewall. That goes up to this tube here. So we can just pull the tube out from this hole, like so. Now we just feed that harness up the hatch hole. Just like that. And now, to pull the hatch off, we have a couple 10s here and a couple 10s here. That's all we need to get off the hinges. I like to put a little bit of a rag up in here so you don't let the hatch drop onto the metal. So I'll go ahead and grab a couple rags to shove in that gap. All right, now with those held in place, let's pop these out. The paint marks on all these bolts will help you realign it later to make sure it's all straight. And just grab it here, kind of pop up. Just like that. Yeah. Hatch is off. So now we can go ahead and take off the door. We'll be taking off the passenger door on this one. We went ahead and took the fender off, which we already showed how to do. This door has also been hollowed out, so it's a lot lighter. All the glass is out, latch, etc. All of it's gone. There's basically 2 ways you can take the door off. If you haven't taken the fender off and you really need the door off, you can open it and reach these bolts from the inside. So there's bolts that go from the hinge to the door. Or when it's off, it's very easy to get the hinges from the hinge to the body off. And those are all 12s, so we'll do it that way. So Michelle, if you can hold the door up so it doesn't fall down. It's got like a alignment peg bolt thing that you can kind of see in there. And down here, just these 2. Now the whole door can come kind of up and out. Oh, and the pin inside. Oh, yeah. So on the other side, we have this little pin holding in this big damper. We just pop the pin out like that. Now the door is free. Now to finalize door removal, we will take off the door catch striker here, And down here on the bottom, this is the little push button sensor that tells your Domelight when to turn on and off. This does not control anything besides the Domelight. The door latch switch that controls the Autobelts is actually built into the latch assembly inside the door. These often get gross and corroded. This one I think is even stuck. It won't even close all the way. Yeah, this one won't even pop out anymore. So these you should definitely replace or clean if you're still kind of work. But that's where the plug was that we unplugged previously. So he's off. Then our striker. And this is the part you would adjust to help your door close properly. So you can see in here where we just unscrewed it. That's actually like a loose piece of metal that just jiggles around. So when you screw these in, you have a good bit of in and out and up and down movement to get this thing aligned wherever you want it to be. Getting down to the final steps here, we're gonna finish to get all the stuff for the gas tank out. We'll start on the outside with our gas cap, which I went ahead and opened. There's 2 Phillips up inside. If it strips out, like the one I just had did, you can also use an 8mm on these. Pop the thing off, no problem. Then the gas cap. This one's tether seems to have broken, but normally you would have unscrewed your cap here, which I want to do to vent the tank. And then we could take off the cap with the tether, save it for future use. And I think we want to leave this the rest of the way screwed in for now, so that way when we're taking the hose off from the inside, this isn't all loose and banging around. We can also take our latch off the same way. So that's the catch. Now we can go inside and start taking off all the hoses and the fuel pump. Earlier, we already took off all the bolts holding this on, so just some 10mm nuts and bolts. Take off this cover. And with this, we can see all of the hoses for the gas tank. And then here, we have our fuel pump access that was under the seat. We can go ahead and take off our fuel lines for the pump. Out of the way. Now, this is one of the most important spots to use a JIS screwdriver on this fuel pump. These tiny, rusty old screws. There's 8 of these little screws. And right now, the TheFestivaStore has upgraded screws that you can use an 8mm or a Phillips on, as well as entire new pump assemblies and factory pump socks. I would highly suggest checking those out. But we will have a more in-depth video on replacing this pump and how to upgrade it, all that sort of fun stuff in a future video. So I hope you're on the lookout for that. Now with the hose out of the way, I can grab it here, pop it out. Then just gotta wiggle it to get around the sending unit and the float. So you start to see the pump coming up here. There's the gasket. I can bend this line a little bit. There you see the sock. There's the float. Pull them both up. There we go. One really clean looking OEM fuel pump assembly. This actually looks really good condition. Normally you expect to see a really rusty one in a car that's rusty, but that looks incredibly fresh. We're definitely setting that aside. I'll give a peek in this gas tank. Gas tank also looks surprisingly clean inside. I'll throw some light in there. Again, it's not the cleanest, and you can still buy these new for now, but I can see some rust. There's no like flakes in there. I can still see a good bit of the OEM coating, so we'll definitely pull this tank and try to keep it. So to pull the tank, a lot of it's from under the car, but we'll start up top with all of this. So here's our filler neck. Then we've got the main vent tube and 2 of the smaller vent tubes. The order of these don't actually matter because it's all venting from the same spot. Inside the tank, these tubes all just go to the same area. So however they fit, they fit. There's no need to keep track. We will unscrew this clamp and this clamp. It's fine, we can leave it there for now. When we go to pull the tank down, we'll be pulling against that anyway, so it should slip off, but I might go ahead and just put some WD-40 in here, try to loosen that up a bit. We'll go ahead and get the other 3 hoses off best we can. These 3 out of the way. Now we look down and see this little sneaky one hiding down here. So I'll go ahead and try to get this guy's clamp off.
Almost there.
That was more of a fight than it was worth, but it's off now. Now we go to the bottom of the car, and there, if this is a factory tank, there'll be a drain bolt in the bottom, so we can drain the bit of gas I put in here just to get it running in the yard. Then we can, for the video's sake, tip the car over and really give you guys a visual of everything on the bottom that you can take apart. So we'll go ahead and drain that and see if we can get this thing a flip. All right, well, we'll see if this makes the blooper reel or not, but this is attempt 1 at flipping the car over so we can see what's going on the bottom side. All right, this is the part where it gets scary. That was kind of cool. All right, we all live?
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
Yeah, did the crane lift up?
Yes.
I wondered.
I can't wait to clean this up. Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't like to see Festiva violence, myself included, the reason we did this is this. That is some of the worst rust I've ever seen, including the fact that the rear beam is actually not attached, as you can see.
Yeah.
And this is the floor. That's where the back passenger's foot would be. And this is where the front passenger's foot would be. And that's the rest of the frame rail there. Down here, it's more foot spot. Yeah, this thing was toast. Bottom. We're gonna go ahead and pull off the exhaust and the fuel tank. And I think that's all we're gonna cover on the bottom of this car, just due to the insane amount of rust. Like, nothing about the rear beam is very relevant anymore. With how torn up this brake cable is, that's not very relevant anymore. This is a good chance, though, to get an overview of how the underside of a Festiva looks. You have your kind of main frame rail over here on the driver's side. Here's all your fuel and brake lines coming from the front. You've got your feed line, your return line, and the vent line from the charcoal canister. Then your 2 rear brake lines. Down here is where your shifter would go in, your exhaust, all of its hangers. Back here, right under the exhaust, this is where the e-brake cable comes through the floor. Since we already disconnected it in the front, I can pull that out from that hole and kind of feed that out. It bolts on to the tank down here, the little 10 mil, which we'll remove in a second. But first, we're gonna try to get this exhaust off, just so we have more access to everything. You can remove the tank with the beam fully installed and the exhaust fully installed. It's just a little hard to kind of work it out from the corners. It's doable, just difficult. I've done it many times that way. But on this one, this exhaust has been replaced recently. You can see that it's not just absolutely full of holes like the rest of the car. So this is a nice aftermarket Walker system. So we're gonna cross our fingers and hope we can get these 2 bolts off to hold the muffler on, and then we will unbolt the whole thing and just pull it off. You can also separate it at the cat and at the downpipe, but due to the rust on this car, I think I'm gonna just not. Boom. For the muffler, we've just got 3 rubber mounts holding it on. I already went ahead and tried to lube these up, but being reached into place, looks like it's gonna pop off pretty easily. There we go. That looks to be in usable condition. Not what I'd call good, but usable. And for the rest of the exhaust, we just go through and find our hangers. One down here. These hooks, which weren't on it to begin with. And what's left of the 2 holding the cat on. There we go. 1 Festiva exhaust. As of recording this, you can still buy from the cat back that little pipe and that muffler new from Walker. I would recommend a lot cheaper than having an exhaust shop build it all. Then for the gas tank, you have some lines you can undo. This vent line here gets undone at the corner. These two lines you already undid from up top. Just to make my life easier, I cut them anyway because these are super rusty and they're gonna be kind of in the way. We have 4 12mm bolts holding the tank in. One in this corner, one in that corner, one in this corner, and one in this corner. And then a little 10mm holding the e-brake cable to the tank. We'll pop all those off real quick. And keep note, if you were under the car right now, this part where the tank would fall down and start to hit you in the head. OEM tanks have a drain bolt right here in the bottom. So this tank, I went ahead and drained it using a stock drain bolt. Aftermarket tanks won't have it on there, but if you have stock when you're pulling out, go ahead and drain it, take all the weight off of it. All our bolts with our washers on it. And then if you look close on here, you'll see the front two have this little body clip that kind of retains it. That's a little shelf that this sits on. So when you're installing it, you can put the whole lip of the gas tank in that shelf, then rotate it up into place. So to remove it, we're gonna do just the opposite. We're gonna take the back side of the tank, hold down, scoot the whole thing back a bit. Then with our hose, one big hose still up here, only half attached, you would wanna drop the passenger side down as best you could. Again, that's just how wiggling it around the beam. With the front undone, you can move the front down, move the whole thing towards the passenger side, and pull it out. Like that. There's the tank, along with our little piece of foam that's glued to it to help keep road noise out. So keep that glued on. And you'll see here, that's the hose that we cut, but you would normally just disconnect from the corner. Then, if you recall from the inside, we undid the hose going to the pump and this hose going to the tank. Now that's out of the way, you can see those lines now up here. So those are the two that go up to the tank feed and the return line. They go to rubber and then straight back into metal lines that drape down across. And there's all the vent hoses that we disconnected earlier. If you're parting a car out, I would definitely recommend saving these. You can't buy the big one new anymore. So for cars where they get dry rotted and fall off, it's good to have spares. And that covers pretty much everything we're gonna do on the bottom of this particular Festiva. Like I said, I'll have more detail for stuff like suspension and brakes and rear beam on one of the cleaner cars as we start to install those on that project.
The LX in the background. Go for it. Good luck. Very front. Alright, well, show us what you got.
I got squats, buddy.
Working on them knees, bro.
Working on destroying them knees, bro.
Alright. We already started.
Great.
Go ahead.
He's blown the bloody doors off. You can be on that side. Sorry.
Well, you didn't tell me that.
Oh, I'm telling you now.
You want me here?
We're sitting right here. They go to metal lines that run.
I don't know what it did.
My beam!
Mommy!
Front of the car going back. This is how the ECU.
Nope. I don't know what happened. I was hung up on the wire.
All good. Thanks to all the rust in this car, now we have the panel off, we've got a really nice tread inspection hole. Really easy to check your tread depth while on the go. Very nice. We also check road conditions pretty easily. Very handy. Now we back in the back of the car, looking towards the front driver's side. We can go ahead and start pulling off.
I found it.
What'd you find? Oh, my card. Thank you.
Metal.
You broke it, you madman.
Fuck yeah, I did.
You broke the strut somehow.
Sweet.
What the heck, Frank? You're gonna have to pay for that.
I think this side's collapsed now.
That's what I do. I kind of like the blue. Not gonna lie.
It's now tucking tire on this side.
Fuck yeah, it is. I'm good like that.
I wonder if you just pop the strut through it like you done in your car.
You fixed it.